Chapter 385. Fated Destiny. The deep-sea dragon carp did not understand what steaming meant, nor did it grasp the concept of char grilling. But its cultivation level was not low, and it could sense the hostility in Guin's voice, which filled it with extreme panic. Guin watched it cry incessantly, and he felt amused. Such a coward, and yet it deliberately sought out danger. How peculiar. Wait a minute. Could this fellow be like Zhu Shi, who also loved to act? Guin decided to teach it a harsh lesson, so he cast an illusion on it. Immediately afterward, the deep-sea dragon carp saw a fish that looked exactly like itself being steamed, then char-grilled. When it saw the char-grilling, its fish skin was scorched black, crisped up, and oozed oil. It could not take it anymore. Accompanied by a spasm, the deep-sea dragon carp at Guin's feet fainted dead away. It's this weak. Guin used his foot to flip the deep-sea dragon carp's body, and seeing that it remained motionless, he felt even more exasperated. After hesitating for a moment, Guin moved the deep-sea dragon carp to a distant part of the sea. If you come back, you're certainly dead. If you dare to reveal my location, your end will be even more miserable than what you've seen. Guin transmitted his words into the deep-sea dragon carp's mind. Given the realm of the deep-sea dragon carp, when it awoke, even if it did not understand the language of the human race, it would still understand what Guin meant to express. As the clouds dispersed beside the great lake, and Hao stood with his back to the saint ancestor, gazing up at the sky. The saint ancestor looked at Hao with increasing satisfaction in his eyes, as if viewing a rare treasure. I never thought you could master the heavenly Tao divine record so quickly. Given time, there will be no one in this world who can rival you, the saint ancestor praised. And Hao turned his head and glanced at the saint ancestor from the corner of his eye, asking, "Has Shangtian managed to master this skill?" The saint ancestor replied, "Of course, but you will surpass him sooner or later." Upon hearing this, Hao fell into contemplation. Having mastered the heavenly Tao divine record, he deeply understood the strength of this skill, which gave him a greater appreciation for Shengshun's might. Even in the Immortal dynasty, all immortals deemed the holy court's Shangtian the strongest in the world. How powerful must one be to win the respect, even from rival forces regarding one's strength? I must leave now. Thank you, Senior, for your teachings. I will never forget this kindness, Hao said. He turned around and bowed to the saint ancestor. The saint ancestor asked, "Will you make an enemy of the holy court in the future?" Hao looked at him and answered, "I am not sure. No one can predict the future. However, I can assure you, I will not make enemies with the holy court on behalf of the Immortal dynasty. My joining was solely for the pursuit of greater strength." The saint ancestor nodded, smiling, and said, "Junior, may you attain nirvana early. Once you do, you will awaken your true power and feel the force of the heavenly Tao, the supreme way in this world." Hao acknowledged, then turned and leaped, transforming into a white light that sped away, disappearing into the distant clouds in the blink of an eye. The saint ancestor watched his departure with a sense of wonder, musing, "I thought this was a declining epoch, but now it seems to be the sign of a prosperous era. Who knows, looking back in 1,000,000 years, what myths will have emerged?" While the saint ancestor was ruminating, Guin was also reflecting. Inside the hidden spirit palace, standing on the path between the medicine gardens, Guin looked into the distance, murmuring, "This guy really is persistent." He was referring to the deep-sea dragon carp. Since their last encounter, 60 years had passed. After several days of silence, the deep-sea dragon carp began its search for the hidden spirit palace, a quest that lasted for 60 years. Over those 60 years, most of the disciples from the Third Medicine Valley and Mystic Valley had changed, and in the mundane world, several generations had passed on. The deep-sea dragon carp, having traversed many seas and faced countless dangers, finally arrived in the sea area of the hidden spirit palace. Now, it was covered in wounds, its scales no longer the resplendent sheen of old. Here a few were missing, there some were gone, presenting a very pitiful sight. Its will moved Guin. He could discern that throughout those years, The deep-sea dragon carp had not divulged his or the hidden spirit palace's existence to other demon creatures. Without probing for information, the creature had managed to find its way here. It seemed to possess hidden talents unknown to all. Under normal circumstances, given the distance, even a Mahayana realm might have difficulty finding the hidden spirit palace in 60 years. Ah well. Guin shook his head and continued to pick medicinal herbs. He opened his attribute panel while gathering the herbs. Name, Guin, lifespan, 612/958, 702, 371, physique, mixed yuan refined void body, cultivation level, Taoist hidden immortal realm perfect, almost 10 billion years of lifespan. Awesome. Guin was in high spirits. This was lifespan he had earned through hard work, not through theft or slaughter, and he felt a great sense of accomplishment. The world was stirring with excitement. Great powers and geniuses were emerging one after another, while he quietly developed his strength, watching the struggles of the world. He was racing toward longevity at an even faster pace, and the feeling was exhilarating. The more he thought about it, the happier Guin became, and he couldn't help but hum a tune. After he finished gathering the medicinal herbs, he returned to the Supreme Sect. The deep-sea dragon carp had just entered the region. It would take another month or two to get near the hidden spirit palace, so he was not in a hurry to meet it. If the deep-sea dragon carp were to die on this last stretch of road, it would indicate that such fortune was not in its destiny, and no one could be blamed for that. Returning to the third Medicine Valley just after midday, the hot summer breeze blew into the valley, and sunlight shone on the 7 stars mirror in Guin's hand, refracting a dazzling light. Guin used the 7 stars mirror as a fan, leisurely strolling forward while waving it to cool down. An Xian suddenly ran over, stopping in front of him, and said, "Master, Wu Ju is in trouble." Guin asked what happened. "Today I went to the inner sect city and heard that he has been thrown into the dungeon of the Supreme Sect, apparently for harming a fellow sect member," and Xian replied quickly. Upon hearing this, Guin furrowed his brow and said, "I'll go to the inner sect." After speaking, he turned and left. And Xian breathed a sigh of relief. Telling his master about the situation was enough. With his master's capabilities, resolving it wouldn't be difficult. Less than half an hour later, Guin, following the guidance of a dungeon disciple, reached the 7th floor underground. Having been with the Supreme Sect for 600 years, this was his first visit to this place. As the Supreme Sect grew stronger, the restrictions of the dungeon steadily increased. It was said that the 18th underground floor imprisoned an immortal. The dungeon disciple halted in front of a cell, briefly explained a few things, and then turned and left. Moving beyond the 5th floor underground was not something just anyone could decide to do. Guin had pulled some strings, so the dungeon disciple was quite courteous to him. The cell was made from special redwood, its surface carved with talismans and containing multiple layers of restrictions. Guin looked inside the cell door. It was dim inside, and Wu Ju, with his hair disheveled, leaned against the wall, sleeping. Inside the dungeon, cultivation was not possible. Spiritual energy was cut off, and Wu Ju had become noticeably thinner. Guin had known when Wu Ju had been caught, but he was not worried about Wu Ju's death given the protections within the Supreme Sect, so he didn't come earlier. When an Xian found Guin, from the standpoint of causality logic, Guin should visit Wu Ju too. Guin, who studied the way of cause and effect, began to see the causality in the world as a game. He was willing to abide by the rules of the game unless the game annoyed him, at which point he would change it. "Brother Wu, I've come to see you," Guin said, simultaneously casting a lifespan detection on Wu Ju. Wu Ju, Unification Realm 5th floor, 614/4500/80/300. His maximum lifespan finally increased. This kid really needed to experience hardship to reach path enlightenment. Everything coming too easily was not good. The Wu Ju in the dark slowly opened his eyes. His vision was blurred, only able to make out a silhouette outside the cell door. After Guin called out to him again, Wu Ju's vision suddenly became clear. Brother Gu. Wu Ju looked at Guan, his face full of shame, not knowing what to say. He was still very touched. The crime he had committed was serious, and the Fong family had formidable influence, leading the supreme sect to abandon him. Those friends of his had been avoiding him like the plague. Having been imprisoned for so long, Guan was the first to visit him. How could he not be moved? Why aren't you speaking? Do you not recognize me? Guan feigned seriousness as he asked. He had already deduced the incident regarding Wu Ju killing a fellow member. The incident couldn't be entirely blamed on Wu Ju. The fellow member was also a genius of the Supreme Sect, who had borne a grudge against Wu Ju for a previous defeat and disliked him. After Wu Ju was defeated by Zhou Tongyu, he went out to gain experience and encountered the genius. Taking advantage of his numbers, he mocked Wu Ju as inferior to Zhou Tongyu, wasting the sect's investment. Wu Ju was not one to be bullied easily. An argument broke out between them, which escalated into a fight. The other party bore the intent to kill, leading Wu Ju to retaliate with full force, and eventually, a tragedy occurred. Since there were other sect members present, Wu Ju chose to return to the sect and report the incident. But those sect members turned against him, claiming Wu Ju struck first. And so, Wu Ju was thrown into the dungeon, tarnishing his reputation. Regardless, Wu Ju indeed had killed a fellow sect member, and as a righteous path sect, such a crime was truly unforgivable in the eyes of the Supreme Sect. Wu Ju felt he had made a mistake and was too ashamed to face Guan. "I don't disown you. It's just that I'm too ashamed to face you," said Wu Ju, taking a deep breath and attempting to stay calm. Ever since he became known as a genius, too many people flocked around him, all of whom were nice to him. Along with being at different stages, Wu Ju met with Gu and less. Sometimes, he would even forget Gu and was his most important brother. Now that he had fallen, all those close friends refused to see him, yet it was Guan who came. In that moment, Wu Ju was filled with self-mockery. What exactly happened? Guan asked, pulling Wu Ju out from his dejection. Wu Ju calmed himself and began to recount the events and the reasons behind them. After a while, when Wu Ju finished speaking, Guan stayed silent for a moment, then said, "It cannot all be blamed on you. Didn't anyone upstairs believe you?" Wu Ju replied helplessly, "How could they believe it? It's not like they can use soul-searching skill on those people. And even if they did it to me, how many would be willing to believe?" Guan said, "No problem. I will speak to the sect leader about it." Wu Ju responded, "The sect leader has already spoken with me, asking me to bide my time until the controversy settles somewhat, and then he will find a way." As the Supreme Sect grew stronger, LV Baitian, being the sect leader, found his authority diminishing. Guan comforted him. "No problem. I will speak with him again. If that doesn't work, I will ask others to speak up as well. I refuse to believe that the so-called Sheng family can have their way all alone within the Supreme Sect." Chapter 386. The sect with 10 million disciples. Upon hearing Gu An's words of comfort, Wu Ju could only offer a bitter smile. An amused chuckle came from a nearby cell. Covering the sky with one hand, the Sheng family really has such capability. Guan turned his head to look and saw an old man with white hair approaching the edge of the prison cell, his hands bony and clutching the mahogany bars. He looked at Guan with a face full of scorn. Guan feigned a frown and asked, "Could it be that you are also from the Sheng family?" The old man laughed and said, "If I were from the Sheng family, how would I have ended up like this? Like your friend, I offended the Sheng family, and even the Hall of Elders told me to lay low for a while. I've been locked up for a century now, and I fear I will spend the rest of my days here, waiting for the day the Sheng family sheaths their butcher's blade." After listening, Wu Ju slightly lowered his head. Guan angrily said, "I refuse to believe it. Is the Sheng family really so tyrannical? I'm going to find a sect leader now." With those words, he left with a swish of his sleeve. Wu Ju opened his mouth, but in the end said nothing. Deep down, he too harbored a glimmer of hope. The Third Medicine Valley was a place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The socially adept Gu and might indeed find a way. After Gu An's presence faded from the dungeon level, Wu Ju began to worry. He suddenly feared that if this did not succeed, it might instead implicate Gu and Wu Ju, isn't it? I didn't expect you to have such a naive friend. Shouldn't the side of a genius be surrounded by hypocrisy? The old man said in a mocking tone. Wu Ju didn't respond, too weary to engage with him. Wu Ju was already familiar with a man's toxic tongue, and he disdained to argue with such people. He seemed dejected, yet deep down, he held a confidence. He was still capable of enlightenment. If no one stood up for him, one day, he would uphold justice for himself. Meanwhile, after leaving the dungeon, Gua did not go directly to find LV Baitian. Considering Wu Ju could find enlightenment, it was better to let him reflect for more time. Guan wandered around the intersect city, meeting disciples who had graduated 200 years ago and probing information about the Sheng family. He could divine outcomes, but he preferred to immerse himself in this grudge and investigate in an ordinary capacity. If that failed, then he could only win by virtue. Gu An's disciples were spread throughout the Supreme Sect. While it was said he was discerning about the Sheng family, in reality, he was enjoying free meals and drinks. Having wandered all day, he felt satisfied body and soul. From today's findings, the Sheng family indeed held significant power. There were many clans within the Supreme Sect, but few could stand out and incite fear as they did. The disciples were fearful that Gugan would offend the Sheng family. Upon understanding why he was investigating the Sheng family, they all advised him to stay out of it. When Guan returned to the Third Medicine Valley, it was already night. Lights shone brightly in the valley, and from a distance, Guan could hear the laughter and cheer of the disciples. Guan felt relieved. Thankfully, the powerful clans within the Supreme Sect had not jeopardized his Medicine Valley. If they had, blood would have flown like rivers. Guan stopped at the base of his own building, but didn't go up immediately. Instead, he knocked on Ji Xiaoyu's door. "Come in." Ji Xiaoyu's pleasant voice echoed from inside, and Guan pushed the door open, then closed it behind him. As he approached Ji Xiaoyu, she curiously asked, "It's rare for you to seek me out proactively. Is something the matter?" "What kind of question is that? Can't I visit you without a reason? Weren't you the one who blamed me for not taking the initiative to see you for decades?" Guan said dissatisfiedly, about to turn around and leave. Sitting on the bed, Ji Xiaoyu quickly grabbed his wrist. "Of course you can visit. Come, sit down," Ji Xiaoyu said gently with a smile, pulling Guan to sit next to her. Guan grunted. "I saw your place was bright and lively, and something just drove me to come have a chat with you. But your first words angered me quite a bit." "Oh my, can't I admit my mistake?" Ji Xiaoyu replied helplessly. How could he suddenly become so childish? But it was quite amusing. Such were Ji Xiaoyu's thoughts as her lips curved upward involuntarily. Guan then smiled and said, "That's more like it. Today, I saw Wu Ju, and he began to recount Wu Ju's trials, with Ji Xiaoyu listening attentively because she remembered Wu Ju well. After Guan finished talking about Wu Ju's situation, he continued with his interactions with other disciples. For the first half hour, Guan did all the talking. Ji Xiaoyu then figured out his intention. Surely, he wasn't seeking her help, was he? In the end, Guan lamented, "Even within the Supreme Sect, injustice exists. Fortunately, our Medicine Valley keeps a low profile and serves the Supreme Sect undisturbed. Why are these clans so overbearing, and might they one day surpass the Supreme Sect?" Ji Xiaoyu responded, "It's possible but difficult. If it comes to that, the Supreme Sect might just become one of their subordinate forces. The stronger the Supreme Sect, the more hopeless it becomes for those disciples caught in dire straits." Guan sighed. He then stood up and said, "We've talked for so long. You should continue cultivating now. Your future is not limited by the Supreme Sect." After speaking, he walked away. Ji Xiaoyu watched his departing figure, wanted to say something but hesitated. Once the door was closed, she couldn't help but mutter, "He only visits when he needs something, and he even expects me to apologize while seeking my help." She shook her head and chuckled, then took out a piece of talisman paper and began to write. As soon as Guin sat down, he saw a white dove's phantom flying away through the window, disappearing into the night sky in the blink of an eye. Guin's mouth curved up. He thought to himself, not bad, quite sensible. Several days later, L.V. Batian came to Guin, accompanied by an old acquaintance, Vice Sect Leader Jihan Tian. The three sat down in the room. Bang! Jihan Tian suddenly slammed the table and cursed. The Sheng family truly goes too far. Those overseas families really haven't integrated the principles of the righteous path of the Supreme Sect into their ideology. L.V. Batian's eyelids twitched, and he said in a deep voice, "Why are you yelling? I'm outraged. You give the order to suppress the Sheng family, and it'll absolutely support you. Why don't you give the order? The Ji family has good relations with the Sheng family. I'm caught in the middle. It's difficult for me. It sounds as if the LV family hasn't benefited from the Sheng family either. We are both in tough positions." Watching them pass the buck, Guin found it amusing, but also felt that the Supreme Sect had become somewhat superficial. Indeed, with the rapid expansion of the Supreme Sect, the cultivation levels of native high-ranking members couldn't keep up with the pace of the sect, naturally diluting their power. Guin spoke up. "Suddenly, I feel like writing a book." Ji Hantian's eyes lit up. "That's a good idea. Panin's influence is still considerable." Guin glanced at him and said, I'll write that the Sheng family is a powerful clan that the Ji family and LV family fear." Ji Hantian glared and said, "Guin, don't joke around." Guin asked, "I understand why the sect leader is here, but Elder Ji, why have you come?" Ji Hantian huffed. "It's all because of you. That girl Ji Xiaoyu is actually helping you, so I had no choice but to come myself." Guin immediately felt somewhat annoyed. When the third miss was forced to go to the 7-star spirit realm, you couldn't stop it. Now Ji Xiaoyu asks you for help, and you face difficulties again. The Ji family is strong, but it feels like it's all about making compromises. At this remark, Ji Hantian's expression instantly darkened. Guin then opened a drawer, took out the fate-determining pen, and from a stack of papers beside him, he pulled out a sheet of white paper. Seeing the two argue, L.V. Batian intervened. "I also trust in Wu Ju, but the Sheng family lost a disciple, one considered among the top 3 talents of this generation. We must provide an explanation to the Sheng family, and I assure you, I won't let anything happen to Wu Ju." Regardless of his relationship with Guin, in the years where Guin had strategized, he truly felt that the strength of the Supreme Sect today could not be separated from Guin's contributions. Guin remained silent, writing down names on the paper, all individuals related to the Wu Ju incident, including those from the Sheng family and others. They knew the truth, but were pushing Wu Ju towards an abyss. If they were compelled, that would be one thing, but the conflict began with them following the Sheng family genius in insulting Wu Ju and even attacking him. Their lies were to protect themselves, choosing to be lapdogs and bullying others. They should prepare for the backlash. "What are you doing?" L.V. Batian frowned and asked. Guin continued writing without speaking, making him genuinely afraid that Guin might do something foolish. He solemnly said, "The Sheng family has a loose immortal. Do you know how high a loose immortal's cultivation level is? If the path of immortality were smooth, you'd have to cultivate for tens of thousands of years. The Supreme Sect hasn't had an immortal live that long. Tens of thousands of years." This phrase weighed heavily, making L.V. Batian and Ji Hantian feel immense pressure just thinking about the age of the Sheng family's loose immortal. Guin lifted his pen, gazing down at the names on the paper, and said with discontent, "I hate my own powerlessness. If I were an immortal, how could I stand by and watch my close friend suffer?" After saying this, he gripped the fate-determining pen and made 2 strokes on the paper, drawing a large X as if to vent his frustration. L.V. Batian tried to comfort him. "Don't think like that. And besides, the Sheng family is just angry but hasn't pressed me any further." Guin looked at him. "Do you remember what I told you hundreds of years ago when you were still Elder Tian?" Upon hearing this, LV Batian immediately fell silent. Jihan Tian spoke earnestly. Guan, don't act impulsively. If we mess up, all three of us could be in trouble. We could be abandoned by our families. You could be abandoned by the Supreme Sect. All these are possible. Guan said, Fine, I understand. I'll pretend I don't know about this matter. Seeing his indifferent expression, LV Batian was somewhat uneasy and asked, Really? I am but a nascent soul realm cultivator. I can't break into dungeons or step through the Shang family's gate. What can I do? Guan replied. LV Batian, after hearing this, could only sigh. I won't see you out, but he'll remember what you've said. While speaking, Guan pulled out a book from beside him. LV Batian wanted to say more, but Jihan Tian tugged at him, and after exchanging glances, they stood up and left. Although Guan felt somewhat disappointed, he could also understand. Not everyone had the same confidence as him. Nonetheless, he had already taken action. What happened next depended on how these two responded. If they didn't handle it well, they too should consider moving aside. This had nothing to do with personal connections. The Supreme Sect leader and Vice Sect leader needed people with greater breadth of spirit to take on these roles, for the Supreme Sect was not just any clan's sect, but a sect of millions of disciples. Chapter 387. The final road, LV Batian and another left, and after about half a month, rumors suddenly spread throughout the Supreme Sect. A group of crazed disciples were proclaiming throughout the intersect city the incident of Shang family's genius bullying Wu Ju, and consequently being killed in retaliation. The matter of Wu Ju killing a fellow sect member had already caused a huge uproar, and now these disciples were telling a different story. So how could it not provoke controversy? Even though those disciples were quickly controlled, the news still spread rapidly. Through the investigation of curious disciples, it turned out that the crazed group was originally the witness of Wu Ju's fratricide. Now having seemingly lost their minds, they presented a different testimony from before, forcing people to consider the possibility of a conspiracy. Some suspected that someone behind Wu Ju had acted. Others speculated that these individuals could no longer bear the psychological pressure and feigned insanity to reveal the truth, while some even believed that they had initially been poisoned by the Shang family and were compelled to lie, but now that the effects of the poison were manifesting, they had lost their sanity and were revealing the truth with their last bit of lucidity. Opinions were varied, and Wu Ju once again became a center of attention within the Supreme Sect. The incident grew so significant that even members of the subsect, such as Yilan and Zhenqin, came to find Guan, fearing he might get dragged into it. The Shang family is truly ruthless to actually poison someone. TSK. Even the subsect is discussing this now. Wu Ju is regarded as a top genius of the Supreme Sect, yet he lacks a family background. If this matter isn't handled well, those disciples without a family background will feel disheartened. Zhenqin remarked astonishingly. Yilan was rather calm, saying, Which sect could maintain peace over hundreds of years? There's always some troublemaker. Sword Venerable Fu Dao hasn't appeared for many years. It might be that the nobles are testing his attitude. Holding a book, Guan focused his divine thought on the distant ocean. The deep-sea dragon carp was being pursued by a group of demon creatures in grave danger. This guy too had gone through 81 difficulties, just one short of completion. Zhenqin tossed her hair casually and said, Let them create chaos. It's about time. Guan looked at her and asked, How about you? Have you been dealing with the ghost mother of ephemera lately? Upon hearing the name Ghost Mother of Ephemera, Zhenqin's smile vanished, and she snorted, Am no match for her. I can't trouble Senior Jiang anymore. I can only cultivate first. Fueled by her hatred for Su Han, Zhenqin's zeal in cultivation remained high, which also made her innate reincarnation skills quite effective. That's good. It's not easy for Jiang Qiong either. After saving you, she must be feeling quite awkward facing her own deputy sect master. Guan continued her thoughts. Zhenqin nodded, then changed the subject. I heard from a master that the Yuanshu ancestor truly opened up a reincarnation realm right in the heavens. But who really knows what reincarnation is like? Speaking of reincarnation, Guan thought of Xiaochuan, who had been in the reincarnation vortex for a long time, without reincarnating, at least within the great heavenly spirit land. Guan temporarily couldn't track his destruction Dao seal. Could he have reincarnated into another great heaven and earth? Is a divine thought true immortal that powerful? If there really is a reincarnation, I'm quite looking forward to it, just afraid that in reality, there is no reincarnation. If every person is reincarnated, then where did the original souls come from? Yilan raised a question. The two women began to explore the subject of reincarnation, intentionally avoiding the topic of Wuju. Guan chimed in occasionally, and time passed quickly. As evening approached, the two women left. Guan then departed from the Third Medicine Valley, first heading to Mystic Valley, planning to stay for an ancient hour before heading to Hidden Spirit Palace. Upon arriving in Mystic Valley, he saw disciples gathered together, listening to an older disciple talking about the Sheng family, with Jiang Shi standing in front of a tree, also listening intently. The issue with the Sheng family had become so explosive that disciples from every tier were discussing it. The reason those disciples went mad was not actually related to the Sheng family. It was Guan who used the power of cause and effect to torment those disciples, continually making them witness the tragedy of that Sheng family genius. Over time, unable to escape the illusion realm, they had collapsed. As for revealing the truth about the Wuju, it was also guided by Gu and using the power of cause and effect. At this very moment, the Sheng family was in turmoil. The higher-ups were overwhelmed, discussing how to handle the situation. Guan walked towards his disciples and joined them to watch the excitement and discuss. Upon seeing Guan, Jiang Shi immediately sat down, behaving very cautiously. Decades had passed, and he still looked forward to cultivating with Gu, and even though he had reached the core formation realm, he had no thought of leaving Mystic Valley. The more this was the case, the less Guan wanted to accept him. He had deduced Jiang Shi's karma and found no great cultivator plotting, which made Guan even more uneasy. Why had Jiang Shi set his sights on him? Could it be the workings of the heavenly Tao setting him up for a calamity? Jiang Shi didn't know what Guan was thinking. He stayed in Mystic Valley because he feared being pursued by the Imperial family and the Li family. Without the strength to protect himself, he didn't want to leave Mystic Valley. As for Guan, although he felt that this master was no ordinary person, he didn't think in the direction of Sword Venerable Fudao. To him, Sword Venerable Fudao was just a vague legend. Except for Lu Jujia, all Mystic Valley disciples in their lifetime had never seen Sword Venerable Fudao act. They harbored doubts, suspecting that Sword Venerable Fudao might not even exist. After a long chat, Guan finally stood up and left, and the disciples dispersed. Watching Guan disappear into the forest, Jiang Shi turned his head and quickly went to Lu Jujia's side, whispering, "Senior brother, where is Master going so late? Why is he always going out?" He had been puzzled by this for 100 years and had long wanted to ask. Lu Jujia glanced at him and said, "Mind less about where your master goes." Jiang Shi hastily apologized. Lu Jujia paid him no more attention and walked towards his own house. Once seated cross-legged on his bed, he gazed out at the bright moon, a look of melancholy in his eyes. Lately, he had been increasingly feeling weak, a tiredness beyond words, always feeling that once he closed his eyes, his life would be over. He began to understand that the so-called imminent end could indeed be perceived. His days might be numbered, and he needed to think about how to settle his affairs. If he were to die, who should he leave the position of eldest disciple to? Who could serve his senior brothers as well as he did? He immediately ruled out Jiang Shi. He wouldn't choose a disciple his senior brother disliked for his position. On the other hand, Guan arrived at the Hidden Spirit Palace and saw that the deep-sea dragon carp had finally escaped danger, hiding in a cave under the sea. After confirming it was safe, it fainted. "You escaped a calamity. Let your final journey be easy," Guin murmured to himself, then flicked his hand, sending a spell through the sea in a way incomprehensible to mortal spirits, entering the body of the deep-sea dragon carp to help it recover from its injuries and regain its demonic power. Afterward, he began picking medicinal herbs. After picking the medicinal herbs, he didn't leave. Instead, he stayed in the Hidden Spirit Palace and read. The Hidden Spirit Palace housed a great collection of books, all of which were his prized possessions. When he wanted to be alone, he would come here. Chapter 388. The strongest immortal dynasty the night deepened, and the Hidden Spirit Palace, located at the depths of the sea floor, fell into tranquility. Guin lay on a chair, holding a book in one hand, while occasionally the sound of the ocean's tides and the cries of mysterious demon beasts echoed in his ears, like a symphony that brought peace to his mind. Time rapidly slipped away in such an atmosphere. Guin set his book aside, stood up, stretched lazily, and looked outside the Hidden Spirit Palace, where he saw the deep-sea dragon carp again embarking on the journey to find the Hidden Spirit Palace. There should be no problem with the journey ahead, as there were no formidable demon creatures blocking the path. Guin watched for a while, then left the Hidden Spirit Palace and returned to the Supreme Sect. The case of Wuju was still the most prominent concern within the Supreme Sect, with many righteous hearts demanding that the sect thoroughly investigate the reasons behind the madness of those disciples. And if their claims were true, Wuju must be granted justice. How could other disciples not panic when even a talent like Wuju could be slandered, suppressed, or even potentially killed? This was happening right beside them. There were even disciples who publicly called out in the inner sect city, seeking to rally the sense of justice in other disciples, holding the Righteousness and Demons, written by Pan in a book that documented the sword Venerable Fudeo's efforts to quell internal strife within the Supreme Sect. With this book in hand, even the disciples from the law enforcement hall dared not apprehend him. While Guin used his divine thought to observe the disciples' public address, he walked into the Third Medicine Valley. Some disciples had already introduced the issue to the Medicine Valley, prompting other disciples to join in discussions. The storm was growing bigger. This pleased Guin. Perhaps the higher-ups were worried that this matter would bring unrest to the Supreme Sect, but Guin was not afraid. He had feelings for the Supreme Sect and did not wish to see it become the sect of a single family, especially since this family was a newcomer from overseas. Wasn't this like a dove taking over a magpie's nest? Now it remained to be seen how the Supreme Sect would confront the pressure from the disciples. Guin did not join in the discussions of the disciples and returned to his attic alone. On the other side, within a dimly lit hall, LV Baitian, Jihan Tian, and three great cultivators sat around a long table, looking very grim. These three great cultivators were from the venerable pavilion of the Supreme Sect, which towered above the Hall of Elders. Despite years of development and foreign forces diluting the power of various halls within the Supreme Sect, the venerable pavilion remained under the control of the original families, which was their bottom line. Gugwa took a deep breath and said, "The situation has escalated beyond concealment. It's time to put pressure on the Sheng family." The aged Ji Hongshi stroked his beard and said, "Indeed, pressure must be applied, but the question is how. Sheng Tianzong is already furious and even hopes that we defend the image of the Sheng family." The venerable who replaced Zhou Yu, coming from the LV family and named LV Lai, had a gloomy face and remained silent. LV Baitian glanced at LV Lai with a flicker of displeasure in his eyes. Jihan Tian, known for his explosive temper and inability to hold back, glared at the three venerables and said, "At this point, we should stop passing the buck around. We are all in this together, and if the Supreme Sect does nothing, we will be the first to suffer. If we don't suppress the Sheng family now, other families will certainly trample over us." His attitude was starkly different from when he faced Guin, fearing at that time that Guin would be exposed to the Sheng family. If only Sword Venerable Fudao could take action, how wonderful that would be. LV Lai suddenly spoke up. LV Baitian glared at him and said, "What? Should we disturb him over such a trivial matter? Have you forgotten his current status? He is now the holy sword of the holy court. Even the colossal stars see congregations appear insignificant before him. Lai shook his head and remained silent. Gugwa pondered. Investigate the Sheng family thoroughly. This is a good opportunity. It's rare for the Sheng family to make a mistake, and we can use this to suppress the influence of other overseas families. Think carefully. How could those disciples be driven mad by the Sheng family? Even if it were true, the Sheng family would never let them out. The talent of Wu Ju is no small matter, and he rose from humble beginnings. Throughout history, where have there been so many strokes of luck? Anyone who rises from obscurity has surely the backing of a great power behind them. Jihan Tian looked at Gu Gua with brightened eyes and asked, "Do you mean that Wu Ju has the support of Sword Venerable Fu Dao behind him?" Gu Gua replied, "It's not impossible. Think about it. The Supreme Sect is not some geomantic treasure land. Who among the past geniuses wasn't related to him? He wouldn't care about the small affairs of the Supreme Sect, but he would definitely step in if it involved the overall spirit of the sect. This group of disciples who inexplicably went mad is the best proof." Upon hearing this, everyone fell silent. The shadows on their faces gradually dispersed. If they had the support of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, what was there to fear? Perhaps he is also watching our actions. If we... Gu Gua continued, leaving his sentence unfinished, but everyone understood his implication. Following his train of thought, the others were shocked and felt a chill run down their spines. Jihan Tian slammed the table and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's do it now. He'll take the lead." With that, he disappeared from the room in an instant. The rest looked at each other, and Ji Hongshi gave a wry smile. Will his temperament ever change? Change? Maybe in the next lifetime. I'm off as well. Baitian laughed and stood up to leave, vanishing as well. The three venerable pavilion members did not linger long, vanishing from their seats simultaneously. An hour later, a piece of news shook the Supreme Sect. The venerable pavilion ordered a thorough investigation of the Sheng family and deployed a large number of disciples to surround the Sheng family's residence. As soon as this news came out, cheers erupted in the cities of the Supreme Sect. The truth had yet to be verified, but the Sheng family's reputation had already soured. This was because other disciples who had been oppressed by the Sheng family were also exerting their influence, spreading word of their high-handed behavior. In the evening, Guan sensed the breath of battle emanating from the main city of Sect, but it quickly faded. The one who had made a move was the Nine-Finger Divine Lord. Baitian personally went to invite the Nine-Finger Divine Lord, who himself held the position of an elder and thus was not afraid of the Sheng family. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord had intervened, moved by what Baitian had said, for Baitian hinted that Sword Venerable Fu Dao was secretly observing this farce. Guan did not mind the venerable pavilion using his influence as leverage. After all, it was the truth. Moreover, without giving them some confidence to forcefully confront the Sheng family, it would have been difficult. What Guan wanted was their stance. That night was destined to be restless. When the sunlight of the following day streaked across the entire Supreme Sect, many legends had already spread among the populace. 2 days later, the Supreme Sect posted a declaration revealing the cause and consequences of Wu Ju's case, clearing his name. It also informed the disciples that the Sheng family too was unaware of the truth, deeming it all a misunderstanding. Although many disciples were dissatisfied, wanting to directly topple the Sheng family, the Supreme Sect would not abandon a noble family over this affair, especially since the deceased was a genius of the Sheng family. Wu Ju came to find Gu, and as soon as he was released, expressing his gratitude. "Me? I had nothing to do with it. I spoke up for you and ended up getting lectured by the sect leader and the vice-sect leader," said Guan, shaking his head while he poured Wu Ju some tea. Wu Ju showed a smile and said, "They're only scolding you because they're worried you might get into trouble. They're probably just trying to stabilize you first while they prepare the evidence." He felt that the frenzy among the disciples was stirred up by the likes of Baitian and others, who dared not openly claim it was the intention of Sword Venerable Fudao. Faced with numerous speculations, they neither denied nor acknowledged. Guan huffed. Who knows what they're thinking? But as long as you're clear to the charges, I'm happy. We must drink joyously all day and night today. You can't run away. Wu Ju laughed. With your cultivation level and mine, you think you can outdrink me? After this ordeal, he had gained clarity about many people and events. He did not harbor resentment, but swore to become stronger and to repay Guan. A noble family, huh? If that was the case, then I too must become a noble family. Holding his bowl of wine, Wu Ju thought to himself as he looked at Gu An's smiling face. He also wanted to become Gu An's support, as a way to repay him. Guan didn't know what he was thinking, but regardless, it didn't matter to him. The issue with the Sheng family was, in his eyes, no issue at all. Helping Wu Ju had many methods. Choosing this way simply added a bit of fun and anticipation to life. Guan turned his gaze towards the window. A gale had begun to blow outside, as if the world was on the brink of great upheaval. Compared to the grand trend of the world, the Supreme Sect's minor incidents were insignificant. The Immortal dynasty was poised to make new moves. Lately, Guan had sensed the return of many existences above the Immortal Tao fifth layer heaven to the great heavenly spirit land, all of them spirits from the Immortal dynasty. Although the Holy Court had not welcomed a large influx of powerful individuals, they were clearly strengthening their positions in every domain. It seemed that the Magic Battle Conference had not brought long-term peace, but had given the Immortal dynasty greater hope. Beneath a night sky sprinkled with dazzling stars, atop a colossal palace with no ceiling, the Yangxian Emperor was meditating below a golden light sphere, eyes closed, hands continually casting spells. A figure appeared above the Grand Hall, the ancient Immortal Emperor. The ancient Immortal Emperor, frowning slightly, asked, "Do you truly intend to break through by force? With your talent, you would surely surpass me. Why can't you be a bit more patient?" Without opening his eyes, the Yangxian Emperor replied, "It's not that this emperor lacks patience, but Shengtian isn't giving this emperor a chance. If we let him succeed in his tribulation crossing, the Immortal dynasty will no longer exist. His talent, as you know, is clear. The realm you could not traverse, he will surely reach. It's just a matter of when." The ancient Immortal Emperor said, "The reincarnation tribulation is not that simple. Do you want to gamble the fate of the Immortal dynasty on his failure? Or bet that it will take him 1,000,000, 10,000,000 years?" The ancient Immortal Emperor fell silent at Yangxian Emperor's retort. Soon after, the Yangxian Emperor opened his eyes and looked toward the distant cosmos, saying, "Moreover, the Yuanshu ancestor did not open the paths of reincarnation without merit. What comes next will be the most potent period in the history of the Immortal dynasty. All those supreme beings will return to fight alongside this emperor." Excitement appeared on his face, unable to wait for a battle with the Holy Court. The ancient Immortal Emperor watched him and said, "Then how do you plan to break through? You don't think the Holy Court would be so arrogant as to allow you to break through, do you? If the Saint Ancestor does not make a move, I too must refrain, or else the situation will spin even further out of control." The Yangxian Emperor shook his head and said, "You need not worry, for this emperor has his own plans. I would even hope for them to try to stop my tribulation crossing. It would give me a justified cause to gain the upper hand." Chapter 389. Do you know what my cultivation level is? As autumn gave way to winter, the snow gradually blanketed the vast Taitsong continent. Guan, wearing a mask, sat on the eaves, gazing up at the sky while Sage Xian Miao, in the courtyard below, engaged in alchemy and curiously watched Guan. The mountain god seemed engrossed in something, having been watching for quite some time. Sage Xian Miao silently thought, yearning for the perspective of the mountain god. The scenery before the mountain god's eyes surely transcended imagination. Could something be happening beyond the heavens? Sage Xian Miao guessed right. Indeed, something was happening outside the heaven, and it was an event of great importance to the world. Guin saw a host of immortal spirits arranging a grand formation in the cosmos. The scale was so immense that even the silhouettes of two divine thought true immortals could be discerned, sitting cross-legged above the formation, their auras completely unhidden. Someone was about to break through. With such an array, it seemed likely that a divine thought true immortal was attempting to advance to a free immortal. Guin could not calculate precisely who it was. The immortal dynasty was protected by chi fortune that obscured cause and effect, of course. Given time, he could figure it out. Yet to know or not held little significance because divine thought true immortals were scarce. And as for free immortals, currently, there was only one in each domain. There were only two acknowledged free immortals in the entire visible great heavenly spirit land. Guin stood up, looking down at Sage Xian Miao, and said, "Great changes are coming to the world. Cultivate diligently and do not be lazy." Having said that, he vanished into thin air from the eaves. The world is about to change? Sage Xian Miao frowned. What kind of calamity would it take for the mountain god to speak of a great change? Elsewhere, in one step, Guin arrived inside the hidden spirit palace, his gaze directed outside the barrier, where the deep-sea dragon carp lingered nearby. After previously bumping into the barrier and confirming the location of the hidden spirit palace, it did not seem in a hurry. Instead, it idly circled the barrier's vicinity, making not a single sound. Guin stepped onto the open space in front of the hidden spirit palace gate, raising his right foot, and immediately after, the deep-sea dragon carp appeared right under his foot. The deep-sea dragon carp was stunned, its fish-eyed gaze widening. This time, it did not struggle, but instead watched Guin calmly and steadily. "Do you have a death wish? Speak, steamed or grilled?" Guin asked expressionlessly, looking down at it. The fish eyes of the deep-sea dragon carp turned teary once again. None of the hardships and dangers it had encountered on its journey had humiliated it as much as being before Guin, where it had cried twice. Guin's heart remained unsoftened. After a moment's thought, the primordial divine eye appeared on his forehead, shooting out a beam of golden light into the body of the deep-sea dragon carp. The deep-sea dragon carp shivered as its body stiffened. After a few breaths, as if sensing something, it cautiously asked, "Are you an immortal?" It spoke with a human voice, sounding like a young boy, full of childishness. Guin did not move his foot, asking, "Whether I am or not, what does it have to do with you?" "Immortal, will you take me in? I will submit to you as my master. Just teach me divine skills, and I will obey you forever." The deep-sea dragon carp pleaded with tears, its tone brimming with misery that would tug at one's heartstrings. "Why should I take you in? Please, I beg you. How did you hear of immortals' legends at the bottom of the sea? Since I was little, I've had many memories that are not my own, likely passed down by my ancestors. I have seen the descent of immortals, and they look just like you. I am human, and the human race exists in this world." "No, you are different from the human race. You give me the same feeling as those immortals." Hearing this, Guin narrowed his eyes, directly employing the great imprisoned soul immortal technique to search through its memories. The eyes of the deep-sea dragon carp lost their luster, appearing as if dead, and it even began to blow bubbles from its mouth. After a long while, Guin withdrew his divine thought, his expression peculiar. There actually were immortals. In the memories of the deep-sea dragon carp, that was a very ancient time, and Guin could not determine how long ago it was through its memories because its bloodline memories were intermittent. The immortals in its memory were undoubtedly beings beyond the 9 heavens of Immortal Path. There were 5 in total, descending from the heavens, casting mysterious crystal stones into the Songhai. That was the only fragment, yet the vision was clear. It demonstrated that the ancestor of the deep-sea dragon carp cherished this memory deep in their bones, unwilling to forget. Guin recalculated, verifying that the deep-sea dragon carp indeed had no other significant karma, before he felt at ease. He gently kicked the deep-sea dragon carp, jolting it awake. Without Guin's suppression, The deep-sea dragon carp suddenly soared upward, floating midair. The deep-sea dragon carp looked at Guin timidly, very nervous. "I can take you in, but are you sure you are willing to give up your freedom for eternity?" Guin asked. The deep-sea dragon carp, overwhelmed with joy, eagerly nodded and said, "I am willing, as long as I can cultivate with you, as long as I can become an immortal. I am willing." "Become an immortal? You'll have to prove your worth first." Guin cast a disparaging glance at the deep-sea dragon carp, then began to introduce it to the situation at Hidden Spirit Palace. The deep-sea dragon carp listened intently, fearful of disappointing Guin. After finishing his instructions, Guin told it to stay put for the time being and that he would teach it cultivation technique later. Then he went back to the Supreme Sect. The deep-sea dragon carp turned its head to look at Hidden Spirit Palace, its fish eyes shining brightly, filled with exuberant excitement. After decades of hardship, the sweet payoff had finally arrived. 13 years later, in the dead of night, Guin stood atop a peak at the edge of Mystic Valley, toying with the fate-determining pen in his hand while gazing at the night sky. The lord of the Immortal Dynasty, Xian Emperor, was about to undergo tribulation. The cosmos had gathered tens of thousands of mighty immortal spirits. Even the weakest among them was of the wandering immortal realm, and that was not the entirety of the Immortal Dynasty's power. Merely witnessing it was enough to make anyone marvel at the dynasty's strength. Above the outer layers of light, cultivators of the great heavenly spirit land from various great sects stood, discussing the unparalleled might of the Immortal Dynasty. They knew the Immortal Dynasty was formidable, but only today did they truly understand the extent of its strength. Most pivotal was that the Holy Court showed no reaction, as if indifferent to the tribulation of the Immortal Dynasty Lord. What kind of terrifying heavenly tribulation is this? Such a dreadful aura. The number of heaven and earth flying immortals of the Immortal Dynasty seems to surpass the combined forces here. What do you think allows the Immortal Dynasty to stand against the Holy Court? The Immortal Dynasty is quite ambitious. Why does it seem like the Holy Court is wary of them? The disciples from the various sects, including those from Mortal World Peak, discussed such matters, and Guin listened in. The Holy Court was not wary of the Immortal Dynasty. They were clearly waiting for the right moment. Guin could sense that within one of the Holy Court cities, a vast number of divine immortals of wondrous dharma and carefree primordial immortals were gathering, evidently preparing for something. He had predicted a great battle where some of the cultivators from the layers above would fail to escape in time and be obliterated on the spot. This calamity would also impact the great heavenly spirit land, causing earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, and other disasters across various domains. For many years to come, Taitsong continent would suffer its influence, and countless living beings would face challenging times. Guin had no intention of intervening. Such tribulation would not affect his Medicine Valley. As for the common folk, they would attribute these hard times to natural disasters, unaware of the high-level conflict. While the immortal cultivation world could understand what was happening, they too would be swept up in the turmoil of conflict. If the Holy Court's control was shaken, the world order would encounter an upheaval not seen in a million years. Xian Emperor. Interesting indeed, quite a remarkable figure. Gu then mused to himself, envisioning Xian Emperor's imposing dominance in the years to come, casting a shadow of dark times over the Holy Court until the emergence of Shengtian. However, he could not predict where Shengtian would be. There were many like Ji Xiaoyu in this world, burdened with the karma of reincarnation, making it difficult to deduce past lives through such karma, thus challenging to discern which one might be the Saint Heaven reincarnation. Perhaps Shengtian wasn't even in the great heavenly spirit land. Just as Guin was contemplating the future, a set of footsteps approached from behind. The newcomer was Jiang Shi. He cautiously approached Guin, and seeing that his master's eyes were not closed, he mustered the courage to ask, "Master, you've been here for such a long time. Is there anything you need? Let me prepare it for you." Guin, without looking at him, answered softly, "Then prepare some wine and dishes." Jiang Shi, elated upon hearing this, quickly bowed and turned to make the arrangements. Guan wasn't too repelled by Jiang Shi's eagerness. After all, the boy had performed well over the years, truly focusing on his practice. The lad had already reached the core formation realm, only one realm below him, the Valley Master. With his talent, becoming the disciple of a great cultivator in the unification realm would not be difficult. Before long, Jiang Shi returned with wine and dishes, along with a small table. Guan accepted the wine Jiang Shi poured, and in a seemingly indifferent tone, asked, "Jiang Shi, do you know what my cultivation level is?" Jiang Shi paused for a moment, deliberating, then answered, "The senior brothers mentioned that you had reached the nascent soul realm many years ago." "Actually, I am a loose immortal," Guan suddenly declared, leaving Jiang Shi with widened eyes filled with disbelief. Under Jiang Shi's stunned gaze, Guan raised his hand, and the clouds above swiftly churned, forming a majestic dragon coiling through the sky. After a few breaths, Guan withdrew his hand, and the spectacle in the night sky vanished, returning to its original state. Jiang Shi was dumbfounded, doubting what he had just seen. When Guan lifted his hand again, Jiang Shi felt the world spin. Upon opening his eyes once more, he trembled with fright. Guan had become gigantic like a mountain, and he realized he was standing in the palm of Guan's hand. At that moment, Jiang Shi suddenly understood how Sun Wukong felt in the palm of the Buddha. Guan looked down at him expressionlessly and asked, "Do you now regret staying in Mystic Valley?" "No one knows of my cultivation level. Those who did are no longer alive." Jiang Shi immediately knelt down, head bowed. Not daring to look directly at Guan and clenching his teeth, he declared, "No regrets. To be your disciple is the fortune of 3 lifetimes." His mind was in turmoil, and he had never anticipated Guan and to be so formidable. All he could do was to desperately try to please Guan, and he was extremely fearful. After all, Guan had previously taken a dislike to him. Would he simply kill him now? He suddenly regretted coming up to the mountain to ingratiate himself with his master. But wait, if his master wanted to kill him, why go through such an elaborate display? As Jiang Shi pondered this, his uneasy heart slowly calmed down. An approving glint passed through the eyes of Guan in observing him. Even though the lad had made mistakes, he was not unforgivable. Lu Jujia's time was drawing near, and it might well be time to cultivate him. The reason for Guan's change of heart toward Jiang Shi was the latter's unwavering dedication over decades to stay in Mystic Valley. He knew what Jiang Shi feared, but that was not important. What mattered was Jiang Shi's ability to remain seated in meditation, unlike Yang Jian, who sought to venture out upon gaining strength. Chapter 390. Displaying Divine Skills at Dawn. Guan emerged from the forest, followed by Jiang Shi, whose expression was somewhat bewildered. Lu Jujia, who was organizing the disciples for training, turned his head and noticed Jiang Shi following Guan, which sparked surprise within him. This young man actually dares to seek out his senior brother? In his heart, Lu Jujia lamented, seeing that Jiang Shi clearly looked defeated. Guan continued on, joining the ranks of the disciples in preparation for training. Lu Jujia did not ask Jiang Shi for details, but urged him to join the queue quickly as the training was about to start. An hour later, Guan left Mystic Valley, and only then did Lu Jujia dare to pull Jiang Shi back to the house to ask about what had happened the night before. Under the control of Guan's divine thought, the disciples in the valley were unable to perceive the disturbances of the previous night and even failed to sense the approach of Guan and Jiang Shi's energies. Facing Lu Jujia's inquiry, Jiang Shi shook his head and said, "Senior brother, don't ask. Rest assured I am fine. I will devote myself to building up Mystic Valley and won't let you or master down." After hearing this, Lu Jujia felt uneasy. Why did it seem that this young man had grown closer to his senior brother? Even closer than him? Lu Jujia thought it over and figured, Since he didn't have many years left to live, wasn't this situation what he had hoped for? He respected Guan and treated Jiang Shi like a son, naturally hoping for a closer relationship between the two. Perform well, your master will take note, Lu Jujia said solemnly as he patted Jiang Shi on the shoulder. Jiang Shi nodded, his eyes blazing with a fire named combativeness. After the summer had passed, the Yangxian Emperor officially began his tribulation crossing. Guan stayed in the attic of the Third Medicine Valley, beginning to watch the divine, thought-true Immortal's tribulation crossing. He wanted to see if the heavenly tribulation of a Yangxian Emperor could match his own. As soon as the heavenly tribulation began, he was disappointed. It seemed not very strong. As a divine thought-true Immortal realm being, he could have easily crossed it. While he was disappointed, the heaven and earth flying Immortals in the exterior layers of sky shuddered with fear. Even from a great distance, they could feel the terror of the heavenly tribulation. What kind of heavenly tribulation is this? So far away, and yet the pressure is still so terrifying? Which level of the Immortal Path's heavenly tribulation could this be? All I know is that from the 5th to the 6th level, the heavenly tribulation is nowhere near as frightening, and this is just the beginning. Could this tribulation affect the great heavenly spirit land? The Immortal dynasty is truly formidable. The pressure we feel is just the residual effect. Look at their formations, how profound. The heaven and earth flying Immortals discussed among themselves. Then, the carefree primordial Immortal and the divine Immortal of wondrous Dharma began to arrive. As time passed, the heavenly tribulation of the Yangxian Emperor grew, increasingly terrifying. From the beginning of the heavenly tribulation, Guan could foresee the result. Even at its strongest, the tribulation could not shake his physique from when he was in the divine thought true Immortal realm. If he were to undergo the Yangxian Emperor's heavenly tribulation, he would surely succeed on his first try. This heavenly tribulation would last a total of 7 days. The next day, the sky emitted a red glow, akin to a burning cloud. The cultivators of the Supreme sect merely thought it beautiful, without giving it much thought. The same was true for 90% of the beings under the sky. On the 3rd day, the temperature of heaven and earth suddenly rose, and the spiritual energy became violet, forcing many cultivators who were in seclusion to emerge, with some even being invaded by inner demons. On the 4th day, earthquakes and tsunamis began to occur all around the world, which the Supreme Sect couldn't ignore. On the 5th day, the Holy Court took action. Guan saw a multitude of Holy Court powerhouses shot towards the cosmos like a rain of arrows. Their mana converged together, forming a formidable force that struck the great Immortal dynasty's formation with an unstoppable momentum. The tremendous aftermath shattered many stars and meteorites in the cosmos, and then surged towards the great heavenly spirit land. The scenario Guan had deduced occurred. Some heaven and earth flying Immortals turned to ash on the spot, and the entire great heavenly spirit land was shaken. The great Immortal dynasty's formation was broken in an instant. However, dazzling flames burst forth from Yangxian Emperor's body, brighter and more massive than even the 7 outer days, radiating endless scorching heat. Yangxian Emperor raised his hand and astonishingly repelled tens of thousands of Holy Court powerhouses with a single move, including 5 divine, thought, true Immortals. Not only that, Guan saw divine spirits with powerful auras flying out from the reincarnation vortex, all of whom were divine, thought, true Immortals and Tao Void mysterious Immortals. The origins of these divine spirits were extremely bizarre, untraceable, almost as if they weren't living spirits but came from the 9 netherworld. They did not go to aid Yangxian Emperor, but instead headed toward the Holy Dynasty. A world-shaking war thus erupted. In the ensuing time, Guan saw divine thought true Immortals battling in the cosmos, Tao Void mysterious Immortals fighting within the Tao realm, and divine Immortals of wondrous Dharma, and carefree primordial Immortals dueling in states unobservable by ordinary beings. The holy gods joined the fight. All the holy gods of the Holy Court were divine thought true immortals. Each of their arrivals resembled immortals descending to the mortal world, majestic and awe-inspiring. Guin was indeed riveted by what he saw. But of course, he didn't forget his own identity, and he would also pretend to be worried when around others. On the seventh day, Yangxian Emperor had advanced to the free immortal realm in full splendor. A violent storm approached. Under the pavilion, Ji Xiaoyu looked up at the rolling thunderclouds, her brow tightly furrowed. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor suddenly appeared beside her, sighing, "This is the Six Realms' destiny ultimate void tribulation. This Yangxian Emperor is truly a rare genius in history, not inferior to Shengtian. Having two prodigies from the same era in a single great heaven and earth is terrifying. It's fortunate that they are adversaries." Upstairs, Guin heard this, and his expression turned odd. The Six Realms' destiny ultimate void tribulation? When he had broken through to the Tao void mysterious immortal realm previously, his heavenly tribulation was called the Six Realms' destiny ultimate void tribulation. 3 realms more than what Yangxian Emperor is facing now. Did this represent a higher level of difficulty? Ji Xiaoyu spoke. Indeed, if there were stronger beings in the great heavenly spirit land to guide them to unite, then this land could soar. Sadly, there are no such supreme beings here, destined to have only one prodigy survive. From what we see now, I believe Shengtian will have the last laugh. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor showed a smile, saying, "I, on the other hand, think Yangxian Emperor has more hope. The Holy Court entered the reincarnation tribulation later than your majesty, and by the time Yangxian Emperor unifies the great heavenly spirit land, he might not be able to escape from his tribulation." After hearing this, Ji Xiaoyu did not continue the conversation, her gaze firmly fixed on the sky. With a loud bang, a bolt of thunder appeared in the sky, resembling a giant dragon, spectacular to behold. "I, Yangxian Emperor, ruler of the Immortal Dynasty, proclaim my ascension to the 9 heavens of Immortal Path. How dare the Holy Court obstruct my tribulation crossing? From this day forth, the Immortal Dynasty declares total war on the Holy Court. In this war, only one shall remain." The voice of Yangxian Emperor resounded, his tone mixed with towering rage, and the most profound part was that only beings of the Immortal Path realm could hear it, inaudible to mortal spirits. Guin couldn't help but admire. This guy's acting was also very strong. Clearly, he had been deliberately waiting for the Holy Court to make a move. The Holy Court had no choice but to act, unable to watch the birth of a free immortal in the Immortal Dynasty. Their failure to act this time meant that the Holy Court was defeated by the Immortal Dynasty twice. Guin was full of anticipation for the future. As the great chaos commenced worldwide, continuously more suicidal attackers would invade the Taitsong continent, and he hadn't taken action in a long while, eager to display his divine skills. Chapter 391 Acceptance. After the Yangxian Emperor's furious proclamation resonated throughout the world, the epoch of great strife was officially unveiled. The successful breakthrough of the Yangxian Emperor led to his arrival at Holy Court, followed closely by other powerhouses of the Immortal Dynasty, who launched an unprecedented offensive against the Holy Court. However, with its robust Qi fortune, Holy Court managed to form a formation out of Qi fortune, blocking the offensive of the free immortals, which amazed Guin greatly. The way of Qi fortune was extremely versatile, no less than the way of cause and effect. To be precise, each of the 3,000 great Tao had its unique excellence, without an absolute strength or weakness, depending on the practitioner's achievement in their respective Tao. Ultimately, Holy Court withstood the Yangxian Emperor's assault, forcing him to retreat and return to the Immortal Dynasty to begin a seclusion. Although Holy Court survived, this battle came with severe losses, causing powers scattered across the world to start contracting. When sects throughout the world saw that Holy Court was not as invincible as imagined, many began to stir. Who didn't want to become the Holy Court? They were only submitting to the overwhelming might of Holy Court, not genuinely loyal from the heart. In the coming autumn, the entire great heavenly spirit land plunged into turbulence. In the late autumn, Gu-in, accompanied by an Exian, arrived at Mortal World Peak, quickly sensing the tense atmosphere enveloping the peak. The world was in chaos, with sects and dynasties watching. Choosing sides was necessary, even without ambition. This was an unprecedented major upheaval in millions of years, making all forces quite cautious. After picking medicinal herbs on Dingtian Peak, Zhu Xinglan found Guin and informed him that the main peak had summoned him to attend a peak master meeting. Guin did not refuse and set off. All divine peak masters were present, and upon Guin's arrival, he received goodwill from many peak masters. After all, in their eyes, Guin was a being that even surpassed the carefree primordial immortal, so naturally, they wanted to forge an affiliation. Once all divine peak lords were assembled, Lord Yongyan began to elaborate on the situation of Mortal World Peak, with Holy Court hoping for their support to jointly attack the territories affiliated with the Immortal Dynasty. The Immortal Dynasty pressed their victory and rapidly expanded after suppressing Holy Court, showing a ferocious momentum of swallowing the celestial sphere. Now, Lord Yongyan wanted to discuss whether to support Holy Court, and if so, how. Guin did not participate in the discussion, merely listening quietly. The vast majority of peak masters believe they should not rashly support Holy Court, their perception shaken by the formidable power of the Immortal Dynasty, especially the Yangxian Emperor, who demonstrated the world's top prowess amidst the mysterious disappearance of Xingtian. How dare they support Holy Court when the world's foremost stands with the Immortal Dynasty? Guin did not look down on them. In fact, their conjecture was correct. Without Xingtian, it was impossible for the two free immortals of the Immortal Dynasty to be defeated. The Peak Master meeting lasted an ancient hour, and in the end, they decided to agree to Holy Court's request, but to discuss later when to take action. Guin returned to Dingtian Peak and guided an Exian in her cultivation. Only when evening fell did the two return to the Supreme Sect. Walking in the woods outside Mystic Valley, Guin observed Zhu Shi while moving forward. "Master, who do you think will have the last laugh between the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court?" An Exian excitedly asked, following closely by Guin's side. She wasn't afraid of a major conflict between the two great powers. She believed her master could protect her. It's hard to say, but one thing is certain, this calamity will last a long time. Guin responded casually, his tone calm, as if he placed no importance on matter. An Exian then asked how powerful the Yangxian Emperor truly was, having heard many disciples of Mortal World Peak discussing him today, calling him the strongest of this era, the pinnacle of the immortal path. Very powerful, very powerful. Even with Hauer's talent, reaching that level would need hundreds of thousands of years. Guin's response astounded an Exian. Hundreds of thousands of years. After the shock, an Exian fell into boundless speculation. Would she still be alive after hundreds of thousands of years? Her gaze involuntarily turned towards her master. For her master to mention hundreds of thousands of years so casually to him, would hundreds of thousands of years be like 10 years, or even 1 year to ordinary people? Anyway, she felt that no matter how strong the Yangxian Emperor was, he couldn't be as formidable as her master. Guin didn't know what she was thinking, but when he saw Zhu Shi pretending innocence after stealing medicinal herbs and sobbing in front of her master, he almost laughed. Given time, the Tai Chu swallowing Yuan body would surely become a supreme warrior of the world, perhaps even surpassing the Yangxian Emperor. Unfortunately, she was born too late and caught in such turbulent times. Truly bad luck. Wait, could it be born to meet the calamity? Guin showed a look of interest and began to deduce Zhu Zai's fate. The Tai Chu swallowing Yuan Boda's fate was hard to predict, but as a Taoist hidden immortal, Guin could deduce some traces of cause and effect. As the years gently passed, With the Immortal dynasty and Holy Court entering full-scale war, the whole world burned in warfare, with far more shooting stars visible at night than ever before. Continuously, overseas cultivators fled to the Taitsong continent to seek refuge, also bringing many grievances and conflicts which kept spreading. 20 years swiftly passed. At the end of summer, Guan stood shoulder to shoulder with Lu Jujiao on a cliff, gazing into the distance. Lu Jujiao had a full head of white hair, and the twilight air around him grew heavier with each passing year. The effects of the youth-preserving pill had already faded. These years, the atmosphere within the Supreme Sect has truly become more tense, and even the sky above doesn't look as blue as before, always appearing gloomy, Lu Jujiao remarked with a sigh. Clouds scattered across the sky, not covering the entire sky, nor showing signs of wind or rain. Guan replied, "Yes, it really is a season full of incidents. What do you think? Are we lucky or unlucky in this life? We always encounter various calamities, although we have passed through them safely under the protection of the Supreme Sect." Lu Jujiao chuckled. "Naturally, we are lucky. Those seniors also thought their lives were filled with hardships. Everyone feels they weren't born in the best of times." "I'm surprised you understand it so well," Guan said to Lu Jujiao, relieved. Watching as Lu Jujia's days were numbered, he couldn't help but think of Xiaochuan. Why hasn't Xiaochuan reincarnated yet? Could it be that he reincarnated in another world? Guan thought of the Immortal dynasty summoning back so many powerful immortal spirits from the reincarnation vortex, and felt that the reincarnation vortex was not so simple. That's thanks to the good teachings of my senior brother. Besides, I won't live too many more years, and the calamities of my life are all made by myself, no one else to blame. Anyway, I am quite satisfied with this life, Lu Jujiao said, shaking his head with a wry smile. Guan snorted. "How come you all have no regrets when it's time to die? Are you afraid of burdening me?" He had already seen many pass away, each one departing with a smile, leaving him not too sentimental, only occasionally feeling nostalgic. "Ha, senior brother, don't think too much. Is it possible that under your care, we really had a good life? We have all ventured out and experienced the dangers of the world, which is why we cherish our current lives and are content with the lives we have led. You really don't need to think too much. No one should be responsible for another's life." Lu Jujiao laughed heartily, then spoke earnestly. He could tell that senior brother cared about the cultivation of those around him. He knew senior brother did not seek wealth or honor for his close ones, but rather hoped that they would live long. Guan smiled. "Where am I overthinking? Actually, I'm also selfish. I just don't want to end up lonely." Lu Jujiao laughed. "Everyone must die eventually. It's inevitable." "True. Let's talk about the Great Sun Divine Sect instead. Who knows when they might attack?" "Really? The Broken Sea Domain is under the protection of the Holy Court. Could the Great Sun Divine Sect really be stronger than the Great Cold Demon Sect of yore?" Lu Jujiao frowned. Speaking of the Great Sun Divine Sect, which had been a hot topic recently, even the realm of heaven and earth flying immortal had strongly entered into the consciousness of Supreme Sect's disciples. Various rumors all pointed to one thing. The Broken Sea Domain was about to face an unprecedented threat, and the Taitsong dynasty situated there would find it hard to escape unscathed. Guan smiled. "How about we make a bet? Guess whether the Great Sun Divine Sect can defeat Sword Venerable Fudao." Upon hearing this, Lu Jujiao instantly raised his eyebrows. "I bet they are no match for Sword Venerable Fudao." Guan's smile stiffened. "No, let's draw lots, decide the order of choice." "I want." "You itching for spanking? Don't think just because you're old, senior brother won't dare to thrash you." "Oh, come on, the disciples are watching. What kind of example would that set? The prestige of the first disciple must be maintained. Don't make it difficult for the next generation's first disciple." The two began to bicker, laughter echoing endlessly. Mountains ranged in succession, and in one forested mountain, numerous pavilions nestled. A young man knelt in the courtyard, his face stubborn, his gaze fixed on the main gate. "No matter how long you kneel, I will not hand over your ancestors' brocade bag to you." A woman's voice came from the gate. Why not? The young man gritted his teeth. My father and my grandfather's deep-seated vendetta. Are you really going to ignore it? They're also your descendants. Exactly for that reason, I cannot let you continue to risk your life. What's wrong with being immortal? Once you step into the world of immortal cultivation, no one ends well. Being immortal, when facing power, when encountering cultivators, we're just meat on the chopping block, at the mercy of others. The young man's voice nearly broke at the end. The mysterious woman inside the gate fell silent. After a long while, the mysterious woman spoke softly. The bloodline of the family is deeply cursed. None of your ancestors had a good ending, not even my son, who did not live past 30. The deeper you cultivate, the worse the outcome, yet still you persist? Perhaps the brocade bag left by our ancestor is meant to resolve this issue. It's useless. I don't believe it. Just give it to me. Let me decide for myself. Someone has to try. The young man said sternly, his body trembling because he had been kneeling for too long. Emotion stirred. His chi blood was somewhat deficient. Clang! The gate suddenly opened. A brocade bag flew out, landing in front of the young man. Overjoyed, the young man immediately picked up the brocade bag, tore it open, and took out a piece of paper, tremblingly examining it. The paper bore 2 large characters. Resign. The young man felt as if struck by lightning. His eyes widened, and he was dumbstruck. Why? The young man murmured to himself. His hands involuntarily clenched into fists, and the paper was crumpled with them. His fingernails dug into his own flesh, blood seeping out, staining the paper in his hands. Chapter 392, The Sense of Intimacy of an Yuan. Why resign oneself to fate? The youth trembled all over, his eyes filled with despair. Dark clouds blanketed the sky, as if destiny obscured the sunshine of his life, leaving no sight of hope. The mysterious woman in the building did not answer, nor did she offer any comfort. She had once felt the same despair when she came across those 2 characters. She did not resent that man either. After all, he warned her before he left. Yet, she couldn't withstand her family's persuasion and got caught up in the disputes, leading to her descendants having to hide in the mountains, humbly lamenting the unfairness of fate. Just then, the youth suddenly felt a sharp pain in his palm, which frightened him into reflexively letting go, throwing the crumpled paper away. He instinctively looked at his palm and saw many blood-red lines appear, quite ghastly. He seemed to realize something, raised his head, and fixed his gaze on the blood-stained paper ball before scrambling over to it. He picked up the paper, unfolded it, and to his surprise, found that the words "resigned to fate" had disappeared, replaced by 3 large characters. Supreme Sect. Supreme Sect. What does this mean? The youth murmured, frowning. He had certainly heard of the Supreme Sect, the legendary #1 sect above all dynasties. With his talent, how difficult it would be to enter the Supreme Sect. Suddenly, a figure appeared beside him, a woman wearing a black Taoist robe with white hair, yet a face that was young and comely. She was none other than the princess of Tianwei, Si Yinner, who had once been engaged to An Hao. She snatched the paper from a youth's hand and scrutinized the characters. Her brows furrowed tightly, her eyes filled with complex emotions. Weren't you the one who told me not to try to ingratiate myself with that elder? Why then leave a secret message for your descendants to go to the Supreme Sect? Did you know this day would come? Or were you worried about the safety of your progeny? Si Yinner mumbled to herself, her tone complex, a mix of surprise, reluctance, anger, and resentment. The youth stood up, his legs weak. It took him a while to steady his stance. Grandmother, what does the ancestor mean? That I should go to the Supreme Sect? He asked nervously, his eyes full of anticipation. Si Yinner took a deep breath and said, Yes, go to the Supreme Sect. The youth, overjoyed, turned to leave immediately. Wait, do you even know where the Supreme Sect is located? How far away it is? Si Yinner suddenly called out to him. The youth turned his head and said, The Supreme Sect is so famous. I should be able to find out by asking around. With your pace, it will take 10 years to get there, by which time you might already be dead. Sienna stared at him, saying emotionlessly. Upon hearing this, the youth's face turned pale. Sienna turned her back and walked towards the attic, leaving behind a sentence. Just wait. They'll take you to the supreme sect. The youth, with a look of delight, quickly knelt to thank Sienna. Meanwhile, Enhao was cultivating in the Immortal dynasty, unaware of what his descendants were going through. He meditated on a cliff, facing a vast and magnificent waterfall, its thunderous roar deafening. Below was a lake as vast as the ocean, covered with a mist that made the place seem like a paradise on earth. A figure appeared behind Enhao, a woman in a white dress, gazing at him with eyes full of admiration. Enhao, the Immortal dynasty has issued a chief fortune bounty. Why don't you take part? With the support of the dynasty's chief fortune, your cultivation level will grow faster, much better than painstakingly meditating, said the woman in the white dress, her voice gentle and tender. Enhao, with his back to her, did not open his eyes, replying, to seek the path of immortality solely through chief fortune might not be right. I believe more in the mana that I cultivate myself. The woman in the white dress smiled and said, That's true. With your extraordinary talent, you can reach the pinnacle of the immortal path on your own. It's just a matter of time. Enhao did not respond. The only sound was the clamor of the waterfall striking the lake's surface. The woman in the white dress continued to watch Enhao, not finding it dull. After a long while, Please return, fairy. Perhaps I misunderstood your intentions. In any case, I will never remarry in this lifetime. I once had a wife, but in pursuit of immortal cultivation, I've cut off our relationship, and I do not wish to become involved with another woman in more than just friendship. And Hal finally spoke, his tone calm but resolute. Upon hearing this, the woman's face subtly changed. She wanted to say something, but couldn't as she looked in Hal's back. She watched his silhouette for a while, eventually turning to leave. Only after she had gone did Hal open his eyes, a look of melancholy in his gaze. So many years have passed. Are you still well? And Hal murmured to himself. An image of a bright and playful girl appeared before him, her smile and glance, even after hundreds of years, unforgettable to him. A year later, near the supreme sect in the forests, Yenner and the young man were on their way, with the young man carrying a large bundle that bent his back. He looked at his grandmother walking ahead and couldn't help asking, "Grandmother, why not teach me to cultivate instead? Otherwise, I truly might die of exhaustion." When the grandmother took out a flying artifact, he was stunned, never imagining she was so powerful. He had also questioned his grandmother why she hadn't stepped in to save his grandfather, his father, to which Yenner replied that she was too far away to intervene in time. Regarding why she didn't seek revenge, it was for his sake too. The enemy was a powerful family with an immortal in their ranks, certainly not someone she could contend with. Learning the reasons, the youth's desire to cultivate and become an immortal grew stronger. He must become powerful. We're almost there. What need is there to cultivate now? Yenner's voice came from ahead. Upon hearing this, the youth was instantly overjoyed and quickly hastened his pace. He began to inquire about his ancestors' relationship with the supreme sect. This time, Yenner did not hide the truth. Your ancestor, named Enhao, was the foremost talent in the world, and now he is venturing in an even more distant realm. He is the pride of the supreme sect, as Yenner spoke. A wistful expression crossed her face. She remembered Enhao's spirited visage. She harbored no resentment for Enhao's decision. After all, it was her own heart that had stirred first, not to mention that before leaving, Enhao had left behind several treasures. It was for this reason that the C family, following their downfall, could survive with her descendants. When the youth heard the name Enhao, it seemed somewhat familiar, but as he listened to his grandmother praising him, the youth did not feel excited. Instead, his expression grew even more somber. The stronger Enhao was, the more the youth despised him. What of it if he was the world's most talented? In his eyes, he was just a negligent forebear, probably not all that impressive. The two continued their conversation as they moved forward, with most of the speaking done by Yinner, while the youth said very little. As they walked, figures appeared in front of them. The first to enter their sight was a man riding a demon bull, followed by a woman. Yinner had long since sensed their presence, with one of them being a nascent soul realm cultivator, undoubtedly a disciple of the Supreme Sect. Therefore, she wanted to approach these two to lead them into the Supreme Sect. She quickened her pace, with the youth following closely behind, his gaze fixed on the Blood Prison Great Saint. What a magnificent bull! Guin patted the head of the Blood Prison Great Saint, signaling it to stop. Ixin turned her head to look and quickly set her sights on the youth, her brows furrowing soon after. In Yuan, Energy Cultivation Realm, level 117/25/5000, Guin looked at the youth's lifespan without a change in expression, but internally he felt puzzled. Why was his lifespan so short? He came here with an Ixin because he had calculated the arrival of Yinner and the other person. He also predicted the plight of Enhao's descendants, but upon truly encountering in Yuan, he was still surprised. His lifespan was unreasonably short, especially considering that there was no sign of illness. Yinner approached an Ixin and, with a salute of her hand, said, "My name is Yinner, from the former land of Tianwei. May I ask if you two are disciples of the Supreme Sect? You're called Yinner." And Zin's eyes widened in shock as she asked. Yinner inquired with suspicion. "Have you heard of my name, miss?" "Of course I've heard. My senior brother mentioned you to me." "Your brother is..." Yinner, too, became excited, hearing Enhao mention his sister. And Xian did not conceal her identity, and upon revealing it, the two women embraced each other as if reuniting after a long parting. And Yuan stared blankly at an Exen, not expecting this woman with the grace of an immortal to be his ancestor's junior sister. So young, she looked about his age. "Who is this?" Yinner turned her attention to Guin, asking with curiosity. And Exen hastily introduced, "This is my master, although not the same as the one shared with my senior brother. He is my second master." Yinner suddenly understood. She, of course, knew who Enhao's master was, the renowned sword venerable Fu Dao. This fact she had not mentioned to Yuan. Guin smiled and asked, "You aren't here looking for Enhao, are you? He has already joined the Immortal Dynasty, and even a Mayana cultivator would need decades, even 100 years to reach the Immortal Dynasty from the ends of the earth." The Immortal Dynasty. Yinner immediately lapsed into a daze. She had naturally heard this name, as the Yuanshu ancestor who opened reincarnation came from the Immortal Dynasty. Has he already reached such a state? Yinner suddenly felt fortunate. Fortune that she had not been overbearing in the past. Had she clung to him in the Taitsong continent, would Enhao have achieved such greatness? "Come back to the valley with us first. We can talk more after a few days' rest." Gu An's words matched Yinner's intentions. She swiftly bowed in thanks and gestured for Yuan to speak. And Yuan, just coming to his senses, quickly bowed in salute. The group headed towards Mystic Valley, and Xian and Yinner walked arm in arm at the front, while Yuan cautiously followed behind the Blood Prison Great Saint. The Blood Prison Great Saint turned its head to glance at Yuan, a strange look in its eyes. And Yuan felt uneasy all over, watched by the demon. Could it be wanting to eat him? He indeed looks quite a bit like Enhao. It's just that the talent is far inferior. I didn't expect the offspring of such a genius to be so disappointing, the Blood Prison Great Saint remarked. Upon hearing this, an irate Yuan glared, but he dared not retort. Guin slapped the Blood Prison Great Saint on the back and said crossly, "Why speak so of the younger generation? Do you believe I could make you worse off than him?" The Blood Prison Great Saint, shivering all over, did not dare to speak further. And Yuan curiously looked at Guin, feeling a newfound fondness for him. For some reason, from that first glimpse of Guin, he felt a great liking for him, sensing that his smile was so gentle, bringing him a feeling of kinship. Guin waved Yuan over, beckoning him to stand beside the blood prison great saint. Chapter 393. Shantian. Terror descends. Do you want to know how I met your ancestor and how? Guan looked at Yuan with a smile and asked. And Yuan felt uncomfortable, knowing his ancestor was still alive and very powerful. He was full of hostility towards Hao and did not want to listen to anything about Hao. However, he could not afford to defy Guan and had to nod in agreement. It was an internal strife within the supreme sect. Guan looked ahead, his tone full of emotion. His voice had a compelling power, letting Yuan vaguely see a certain scene. It was a grand hall where Guan met Hao. The one walking ahead, Si Yin'er, was also listening attentively, curious about Hao's experiences in the supreme sect. An hour later, the group arrived at Mystic Valley, and Guan asked Jiang Shi to help settle them. At present, Lu Jujia had already begun to delegate authority to Jiang Shi increasingly. Among the disciples in the valley, Jiang Shi had the highest cultivation level and deepest seniority. The disciples all respected him. In the depths of the night, inside the house, Si Yin'er sat opposite an exine, taking out a blood-stained piece of paper left by Hao. Looking at it made Zin's heart ache for Yuan. On the way back, she had already learned about the plight of Hao's descendants and was quite indignant. I don't know what this paper means. Can you help me understand? Si Yin'er asked nervously, also unclear about what she should do after arriving at the Supreme Sect. An Xin saw the words Supreme Sect and knew that Hao wanted his descendants to seek Gu An's help in desperate times. She pondered and asked, "What is your request?" Hearing this, Si Yin'er felt hopeful and said, "I don't expect much. I only hope to change the destiny of that boy in Yuan." An Xin thought for a moment and suggested, "Let's keep Yuan in Medicine Valley then. I will take care of him, and you can also stay and join the Supreme Sect, but you must not meet him." She knew Gu N's character. Being able to keep Yuan was already good enough. She couldn't keep the whole family in Medicine Valley, especially since the Supreme Sect was vast, and for someone of Si Yin'er's cultivation level, joining was not difficult. Upon hearing this, Si Yin'er immediately grabbed Zin's hand in gratitude. She didn't doubt Zin's words. An Xin was also a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao and naturally could meet Sword Venerable Fudao. "About my relationship with my master, do not speak to others about it," an Xin said earnestly. "He does not wish to be disturbed, and I am just a disciple of Medicine Valley and do not want to be involved in troubles." After speaking, she suddenly realized why Guan liked to say these words. "Not bad, quite a feeling." Si Yin'er immediately promised not to divulge it. For Si Yin'er, that night was one of relief, and for Yuan, it was filled with hope. As the moon set and the sun rose in the early morning, and Yuan was drawn by the commotion in Medicine Valley, he stepped outside the house and saw nearly 300 disciples practicing drills together. It was quite spectacular. Si Yin'er was also watching from the side. When the drills finished, she bid farewell to Guan, preparing to leave since she had more than just Yuan as a descendant. "If life gets tough, bring your offspring and return," Guan said gently. "I still have some influence in the Supreme Sect and can help you sort things out." He would not deliberately aid those with whom he did not have a close karmic connection, but if someone came to him for help, he wouldn't refuse. Moreover, he foresaw that the family offended by the infamily would have further entanglements of gratitude and resentment, a long line of fate. Si Yin'er hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement and thanked Guan, watching her departing figure. Guan thought about seeing her in the past as Sword Venerable Fudao. At that time, she did not have this weathered air about her, lively and playful like Zhenqin, and seemed like a joyous nemesis with Hao. Times and circumstances change. Guan mused, his gaze then shifting to Yuan. He probably understood why Yuan had a short lifespan. Yuan's ancestors had all died due to misfortune, especially in recent generations, dying ever so prematurely. Everything was related to the heritage Hao had received at the Holy Court. Heavenly Tao heritage. This made Guan think of the Heaven Sect, which had also received the heavenly Tao's heritage and then had to abandon all emotions after gaining great power. Could it be that the descendants and close friends of the Heaven sect had all died due to misfortune? Such a heavenly Tao heritage was too malicious. Why was it so? Could it be that it intended to make the heavenly Tao cultivators desireless and without emotional weaknesses? Guan did have a method to try, which was to sever the cause and effect between in Yuan and in Hao, making the two unrelated. Looking at extremes in lifespan, and Yuan was also talented, just not as much as in Hao. He wasn't in a hurry to change in Yuan's fate just yet, hoping to let the boy settle for 2 years first. His intention for revenge was too strong, highly resembling the early days of Suhan. Days passed by one after another. After joining the Mystic Valley, and Yuan received the cultivation techniques from Jiangshi. Although he could not become strong quickly, he finally saw some hope. One night, and Yuan had a heart-to-heart talk with Jiangshi. The two had similar fates, both carrying deep-seated hatreds. The difference was that in Yuan was also trapped in destiny, which made Jiangshi feel very sympathetic and decided to give him a hand. Jiangshi took in Yuan as his disciple and taught him all he knew. Guan did not stop them, hoping they could redeem each other, until one afternoon at the end of autumn. "I've decided," and Yuan suddenly stood up, his face firm as he looked towards the distant sky. Sitting by his side, Jiangshi looked at him in surprise, not knowing why the boy was so agitated. The master and disciple were on a mountaintop, overlooking the magnificent landscape afar, and Yuan, with great ambition, shouted loudly, "I want to surpass in Hao. From now on, I'm not called in Yuan. My name isn't Xingtian." Boom! Thunder rumbled in the distant clouds as if the heavens were responding to him. Jiangshi looked at Xingtian, feeling a shiver in his spirit from an unprecedented aura radiating from him. He had never met in Hao, but had heard of his legend. That was a cultivator said to have the highest talent. This boy's ambition. A smile appeared on Jiangshi's face. He was about to speak when a loud voice echoed between heaven and earth. "The strongest man in the Broken Sea domain, Holy Sword of the Holy Court, show yourself. If you do not appear, I will suppress all living beings in Broken Sea domain with one palm." The voice was immensely domineering and filled with oppression, startling in Shangtian and Jiangshi as they looked up, both opening their mouths in disbelief. Above, the dark clouds churned, and an immensely majestic figure appeared on the horizon, full body obscured, only a golden breastplate visible, which was larger than any mountain between heaven and earth. It was as if a demon god from beyond the world was peering at the mortal spirits within. The sense of oppression chilled in Shangtian and Jiangshi down to their spines. Not just them, the entire Taizong continent, the entire Broken Sea domain, all living beings who saw that majestic figure felt fear. What kind of existence was this? Could it be an immortal? At the third Medicine Valley, Guan walked downstairs, and Ji Xiaoyu also stepped outside, looking at the figure on the horizon, her brows furrowed. "Where are you going?" Ji Xiaoyu called out to Gu, and "I'm going to see Mystic Valley, worried about the disciples." Guan replied over his shoulder, then quickly walked toward the transmission array platform. Chapter 394. How can he be so strong above the sea of clouds? A man clad in golden battle armor stood proudly. He had a strapping figure and exuded an aura of domination. Clutching a long spear, his golden armor radiated a brilliance that reached thousands of meters. Looking above his helmet, the stars scattered across, and the universe dazzled. He appeared as if he was amidst the universe itself. Looking downward, he could see the vast ocean with continents appearing as mere pebbles under his feet, so insignificant. His gaze locked onto the Taizong continent, filled with a fighting spirit. He hailed from the Immortal dynasty, known as Autumn Evening Immortal Lord. Upon closer inspection, his left hand was held aloft, and within the palm was a city with numerous cultivators above it, tinier than specks of dust. Broken Sea Domain City. Qing Songzi, whose cultivation level had reached the 7th layer of the carefree primordial immortal realm, looked up at Autumn Evening Immortal Lord with eyes filled with fear. This domain master of the Broken Sea had never felt so weak. He who ruled over all beings in his domain now felt only panic, unable to maintain the demeanor of a domain master. What we do? We can't escape it all. What realm is this guy in that he can suppress us all with a single palm? Autumn Evening Immortal Lord. I've heard of his legends. He surpassed the carefree primordial immortal centuries ago. In his youth, he was unrivaled among his peers. The immortal dynasty is too presumptuous. Aren't they afraid of Shangtian coming back? We should have eradicated the immortal dynasty long ago. The successive Shangtians were too benevolent. Cultivators in Broken Sea Domain City discussed anxiously as despair spread throughout the city. Autumn Evening Immortal Lord did not glance at the city in his palm. His focus remained steadfast on Taizong Continent, waiting for the Holy Court Holy Sword to make a move. If he could slay the Holy Sword, he would gain immense chi fortune. He had investigated. The Holy Court Holy Sword had not received the chi fortune of the Holy Court, making him an easier target without the protection of the chi fortune of the Holy Court. He patiently waited as he had set a deadline in his mind. If the Holy Court Holy Sword did not appear by the time, he would have no choice but to annihilate the Broken Sea Domain. For him, a born immortal spirit, slaying numerous beings did not evoke any guilt, just as humans may feel disgust, but rarely guilt when stepping on a horde of insects. All beings within the Broken Sea Domain could look up and see his immense projection. This was a divine skill with immense oppressive force, aimed to crush the spirits of the masses and kill any intent of resistance. Facing his figure that seemingly dwarfed the heavens and the earth, most beings felt intense fear. Even if they thought of fleeing, they didn't know where to go. It seemed wherever they flew, they couldn't escape from beneath the feet of Autumn Evening Immortal Lord. This was a sensation of despair, like facing the vast heavens. In the Supreme Sect, within Mystic Valley, Jiang Shi and Enchanting returned to the valley, and the disciples surrounded Guan, extremely tense. In such times, they could only rely on Guan, hoping he could comfort them. Don't worry, the Supreme Sect is full of experts. Moreover, Sword Venerable Fudao is here. If someone provokes Sword Venerable Fudao, how could he tolerate it? Guan spoke, alleviating some of the disciples' tension, but some still harbored concerns. Master, is Sword Venerable Fudao really still here? Although there is indeed a vast sword intent on the heavenly repair platform, he hasn't made a move in many years. A disciple said worriedly, immediately causing other disciples to echo his sentiment, and panic spread once again. Gulen continued to comfort them verbally while considering in his heart how to deal with this Tao void, mysterious, immortal. How dare this guy show such a form and openly challenge him in front of everyone? Then Gulen must also defeat this man assertively in front of all beings. It's been too long since he last acted. It's about time to remind the disciples of his existence. This time he wouldn't use swordsmanship, opting for something more spectacular. After calming the disciples, Gulen turned and walked toward the transmission array platform. When he teleported to the third Medicine Valley, as soon as his right foot touched the ground, he began to unleash his divine skills. Ji Xiaoyu first turned her gaze towards him, but a moment later, she was captivated by the anomaly in the sky. Rolling dark clouds spun violently, and a massive wind surged between heaven and earth as an immense oppressive force descended. Countless beings instinctively looked up only to witness a moment they would never forget. The sea of clouds in the sky formed a cyclone that kept rising as if intending to sweep into outer heaven. As the remaining clouds ascended, more of Autumn Evening Immortal Lord's majestic figure was revealed. However, this time, the beings did not fear his figure because a yet larger presence appeared. That was the sky's zenith. A huge disk, swirling with gray mist, expanded while rotating, quickly overshadowing the top of Autumn Evening Immortal Lord's head. Autumn Evening Immortal Lord's true form looked up as his immense projection did likewise, his face showing fear. The ultimate primordial disk. This was a great divine power inherently possessed by the primordial ultimate body, supremely overbearing. Guin had never used this great divine power in reality before. As the ultimate primordial disk began to coalesce, the vast oppressive force engulfed Autumn Evening Immortal Lord, leaving him unable to escape. How is this possible? What is his cultivation level? Autumn Evening Immortal Lord thought with a pounding heart. He was a Tao void, mysterious immortal, and the Holy Court Holy Sword had never demonstrated the power of a Tao void, mysterious immortal in the reports from the Immortal Dynasty. The Holy Sword's strength was regarded as between the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma and a Tao void, mysterious immortal. Even if it reached the level of a Tao void, mysterious immortal, it shouldn't surpass his own. He was a Tao void, mysterious immortal of the 7th layer. But right now, he finally realized how terrifying the cultivation level of the Holy Court Holy Sword was. Not even a divine thought, true immortal, could possess such exaggerated oppressive power. He could not escape, nor could he speak, and even his divine sense and primordial spirit could not leave his body. Fear and despair swiftly occupied his heart, and his eyes were full of terror. Under his gaze, the ultimate body of the primordial talisman successfully condensed, and the gray disk was covered in dense patterns, as if it hid a vast world, awe-inspiring to behold. The projection of the sun and moon Netherworld Emperor was immensely large, towering over everything, making all else seem insignificant. Yet under the ultimate body of the primordial talisman, he appeared less so. The ultimate body of the primordial talisman seemed to cover the entire great heavenly spirit land. In truth, it only covered the sky of the Broken Sea domain. Guin had used a small trick. In the eyes of the beings in the Broken Sea domain, the ultimate body of the primordial talisman indeed seemed as vast as the great heavenly spirit land, creating a terrifying visual impact. The sun and moon Netherworld Emperor appeared from thin air next to Ji Xiaoyu, looking up in amazement. What kind of divine power is this? The sun and moon Netherworld Emperor was filled with fear. He had heard of Sword Venerable Fudeo's existence, but his divine sense had swept through the supreme sect without finding him. He thought Sword Venerable Fudao had been scared off. Now, it seemed that their cultivation levels were too different, and he simply couldn't detect where Sword Venerable Fudao was, or who he was. Perhaps Sword Venerable Fudao had appeared before him, and he had failed to see through him. The thought made him shiver with dread. Standing beside him, Ji Xiaoyu did not respond. She too had never witnessed this divine power, and her heart was filled with shock. Just how powerful was Sword Venerable Fudao? She had already recalled memories from her past life, where in the 7-star spirit realm, Sword Venerable Fudeo's demonstrated strength was far less than it was now. She had then looked forward to Sword Venerable Fudeo's future, but now it seemed she had underestimated him. Back then, she had unleashed the power of a primordial Taoist talisman, with her true self's consciousness returning. If her true self had misjudged, didn't that imply that Sword Venerable Fudeo's Tao level was stronger than her true self's? Her feelings became complicated. If they felt this way, what about all living beings? What is that? My heavens, am I dreaming? Could it be that heaven is angry? It's Sword Venerable Fudao? It must be him. He's still in the Supreme Sect. Why isn't Sword Venerable Fudao displaying Sword Tao divine skills? Isn't this divine power stronger than the Sword Tao? Look at that guy, he's scared stiff. Ha ha ha. Daring to challenge, Sword Venerable Fudao is truly seeking death. The Supreme Sect was abuzz, everyone revitalized, and the beings of the Taizong continent were also excited, shouting the name of Sword Venerable Fudao. For the countless beings of the Broken Sea domain, it was merely a shock. Is this the capability of the Holy Sword of the Holy Court? If heaven had power, Would it not be like this? It's been many years since anyone dared to challenge me. This is the ultimate body of the primordial talisman. Feel the power of the Tao. A hoarse voice echoed through the world, laden with oppression. Hearing this voice, all beings were electrified. Yu Yingying looked towards Guan from afar, seeing his shocked expression, and she was filled with confusion. And Xin was also looking at Guan, and her heart was full of admiration. Compared to her master, her acting was still too poor. At the same time, she was overwhelmed. Was this truly her master's power? Little did she know, Guan hadn't even used his full strength. He had even suppressed his aura to the 9th layer of the divine thought, true immortal realm, giving others a glimmer of hope to continue sending people to their doom. Yet even so, Ji Xiaoyu felt he was beyond a divine thought, true immortal, and perhaps even a usual free immortal could not match him. Boom! A deafening roar erupted, rendering the beings temporarily deaf, which didn't pain them, but merely left them unable to hear. Countless creatures watched the vast ultimate body of the primordial talisman descend, as if witnessing a divine spectacle. Guan opened his mouth in disbelief, staring at the sky as the strong wind swirled his robes. With a thought, he allowed the sun and moon Netherworld Emperor to speak, nothing more. No, Elder, I was wrong. Give me a chance to atone. Once the sun and moon Netherworld Emperor realized he could speak, like grasping a lifeline in water, he yelled hoarsely, his voice echoing throughout the Broken Sea domain. Under Gu An's suppression, beings outside the Broken Sea domain couldn't hear, but the already deaf beings of the Broken Sea domain distinctly heard the sun and moon Netherworld Emperor's hoarse scream. Guan was establishing his authority among the beings of the Broken Sea domain, yet he also wanted the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court to underestimate him. No matter how much the sun and moon Netherworld Emperor begged for mercy, the descent speed of the ultimate body of the primordial talisman suddenly decreased. Eventually, the ultimate body of the primordial talisman landed above the head of the sun and moon Netherworld Emperor. Almost instantly, the projection of the sun and moon Netherworld Emperor was annihilated, and his true self felt an incredibly terrifying suction force. The main city of the Broken Sea domain he held was yanked out, crashing into the ocean, leaving the cultivators there wide-eyed. They would never forget this scene in their lifetimes. How could he be so powerful? Qing Songzi muttered to himself, suddenly realizing why Sword Venerable Fu Dao had declined the offer of the Qi Fortune Fruit position and why the Holy Minister had agreed. Chapter 395. Fame Shakes the World. The Apex Talent. The Supreme Primordial Great Disk hung high above, much like the highest and supreme Tao suspended above all living beings. The true form of Immortal Lord Xiaoxi was drawn into the Supreme Primordial Great Disk, so filled with despair and helplessness, devoid of any means of resistance. As he disappeared into the Supreme Primordial Great Disk, the rumbling of heaven and earth continued unabated, causing the entire Broken Sea domain to tremble as if the apocalypse had arrived. Moments later, a prompt appeared before Gu An's eyes. You have successfully slain Immortal Lord Xiaoxi, Tao Void Mysterious Immortal Realm Level 7. 340,876 years of lifespan. Not bad. It saves half a month's labor. Although Guan thought this, the look of shock remained on his face. That was his belief. The acting had to be thorough. The Supreme Primordial Great Disk did not vanish immediately, but continued to hang in the sky for the adoration of all beings. Because the Supreme Primordial Great Disk was so immense, the patterns on it were so clear to all beings. Those images seemed to record ancient myths, which left the beings in awe. After a long while, the wind between heaven and earth began to calm, and a majestic gray fog emerged around the Supreme Primordial Great Disk, drowning it in splendor, and the sky darkened. Only then did the beings regain their senses, instantly stirring with excitement. The oppressive might of Immortal Lord Qiushi had completely vanished. Did this not mean that Sword Venerable Fudao had slain him? Unbelievable. Immortal Lord Qiushi had appeared daunting and formidable, like the wrath of the vast heavens, and the mortal spirits could only tremble. Even with Sword Venerable Fudao's intervention, they had expected an earth-shattering great battle, yet it ended with one-sided suppression. Tyrannical. Invincible. Even though they could not see Sword Venerable Fudao in person, this was the impression that the beings formed of Sword Venerable Fudao from witnessing the battle. The sky gradually brightened, and the dark clouds began to disperse, leaving no trace of the supreme primordial great disk as if it had never appeared. The third Medicine Valley was abuzz with noise. All disciples were excited. Guan briskly approached Ji Xiaoyu and eagerly asked, "With your abilities, can you tell what realm Sword Venerable Fudao is in?" Ji Xiaoyu looked at him, offering no reply. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor then took a deep breath and said, "His realm is not something you should conjecture. Boy, just be your mortal self, and do not involve yourself in great causes." Having said that, he vanished into thin air. Guan pretended to be astonished, but felt secretly thrilled inside. Yes, this is the feeling. Though you look down on me, I shall wait for you on the immortal path, but whether you can make me see you, that's still to be seen. Guan turned to Ji Xiaoyu and asked, was he unsettled by Sword Venerable Fudao? Ji Xiaoyu nodded and said, "Indeed, Sword Venerable Fudao is powerful. I never expected there to be such a great cultivator hidden within the great heavenly spirit land. I even suspect what? Nothing, am going back to cultivate." As Ji Xiaoyu turned away and left, Guan cocked his head, feeling as though she too was provoked. Guan chuckled inwardly and then waited in place, feeling Shunjun's presence, eager to hear how Shunjun would boast about Sword Venerable Fudao. After 30 minutes, Supreme Sect remained noisy, and there were even many disciples kneeling at the heavenly repair platform in worship of the heaven-cutting axe. Inside the loft, Guan had a strange look on his face as he watched Shunjun sketch the supreme primordial great disk on paper. He had a very subtle feeling that someone was spying on his path, and that person was Shunjun. That is to say, Shunjun's drawing concealed mysteries. He also pondered another question. If he could feel Shunjun spying, then could the ancient beings depicted in her previous drawings sense her too? There was a time before when a drawing suddenly destroyed itself. Was that perhaps a warning? How about it? Impressive, right? Shunjun saw Guan silent and proudly asked. Guan looked up at her and asked, "Aren't you afraid of displeasing Sword Venerable Fudao?" Shunjun waved her hand and said, "How could that be? Sword Venerable Fudao guards the Supreme Sect, and now I too am a disciple of the Supreme Sect. He is practically my martial master. How could he mind such things? Don't forget the existence of the heavenly repair platform. No one in this world has a broader heart than Sword Venerable Fudao." Well spoken, I like it. Guan then joined in the praises for Sword Venerable Fudao, catching Shunjun in the act, who had long admired Sword Venerable Fudao, and today's battle had awakened the fervor hidden deep in her heart. It was not just them. Throughout the various oceans, continents, and islands of the Broken Sea domain, wherever there were living beings, they were discussing Sword Venerable Fudao. They preferred the name Sword Venerable Fudao over the Holy Court's Holy Sword. Moreover, the title of Holy Sword had been unilaterally announced by the Holy Court, and they had not heard of Sword Venerable Fudao accepting this title. The commotion at the Broken Sea domain was great, and even though Guan tried to contain it, the prior activities of the Autumn Evening Immortal Lord had already spread, causing various sects to start sending people to investigate. The impact of this battle was far from over. It continued to spread over the following years. The Autumn Evening Immortal Lord was no ordinary being. He was the highest realm faller of the Immortal Dynasty. When the news reached the Holy Court, the Holy Minister was greatly pleased. "Ha, do you see? This is why I agreed to him not accepting the chief fortune. When I met him, I felt he was extraordinary. Now it seems he might very well be a free immortal. The holy minister stood on the high steps, laughing heartily with great passion. In the hall stood holy gods, holy kings, and other beings of the third grade heavenly position. They were all immensely shocked. The autumn evening immortal lord was an age-old being with unquestioned power, yet he was easily slain. How can you tell he's a free immortal? The divine thought true immortal could also kill the autumn evening immortal. He, the key is you couldn't see how he killed the autumn evening immortal. Yangxian Emperor must be furious now. I heard the Immortal Dynasty had previously also sent people to woo Sword Venerable Fudao. A free immortal? Who exactly is this divine personage? If he truly is a free immortal, his name must resonate through the ages. Could he be from outside heaven? But we need not investigate him. It would only push him towards the Immortal Dynasty. From his actions, this person has a compassionate heart for all living beings. Befriending him would pose no threat. The high ranks of the Holy Court discussed fervently, admiring Sword Venerable Fudao, which made the Holy Minister smile even more broadly. Their previous attempt to woo Sword Venerable Fudao had already caused discontent within the Holy Court, and with the court being suppressed by the Immortal Dynasty over the years, the Holy Minister felt deeply stifled. No, I must make another trip, the Holy Minister thought, his eyes twinkling. The Immortal Dynasty received the news just as fast. Because a Tao void mysterious immortal from their ranks had died, the autumn evening immortal lord held a revered position in the Holy Court. His death thoroughly enraged the immortals, making Sword Venerable Fudao the most hated figure among them. And Hao was also oppressed because of this, but his life was not in danger. Before dealing with Sword Venerable Fudao, he was grounded and couldn't leave the Immortal Dynasty. The deterrent power of slaying a Tao void mysterious immortal was indeed too strong, which prevented the Immortal Dynasty from retaliating immediately, instead sinking into a strange silence. When Guan and an Xin went to the mortal world peak, all the peaks were discussing this battle. The name of Sword Venerable Fudao resounded across the world once more, earning the admiration of countless beings. After all, though Sword Venerable Fudao was a holy sword of the Holy Court, he had not received the reward of chief fortune. Without being under the Holy Court or the Immortal Dynasty, his capability to exhibit his own mighty prowess was truly awe-inspiring. Time flew swiftly. 3 years passed, and the end of the year arrived. Guan arrived in Mystic Valley and saw his disciples clearing the snow. His gaze landed on the mountain beside him, wherein Shengtian was following Jiangshi in cultivation, all disciples feeling Jiangshi's preference for Shengtian. Lu Jijiao walked over and laughed. That kid, like me back in the day, truly spares no effort in teaching his disciples, holding nothing back. In his view, Jiangshi did quite well. After all, Enshengtian was a descendant of Enhao. Regardless of Enshengtian's achievements, he was at least forming a good bond with Enhao. Guan nodded and said, "Call them both to my cabin in a while." With that, he walked toward his own pavilion. Soon, he arrived inside his house, rubbed his hands together, and then from his sleeves, he took out a book. A radiant smile appeared on his face as he muttered, "Xian Tianyi, could you write a bit faster? You're really slowing down." It had been decades since the last volume of Green Hero Travelogue was released, and over those years, Guan had been eagerly waiting. He could have divined the contents of Green Hero Travelogue by divining Xian Tianyi, but he had chosen not to. After all, life should have some expectations. Otherwise, time would pass very quickly. He sat in a chair and began reading the book. About 30 minutes later, Jiangshi brought in Shengtian to Guan's house. 20-year-old and Shengtian had even more of Enhao's demeanor. Their facial features were nearly identical, which was probably why Si Yin'er had relented. There had been other descendants of the Yin family asking her, but she had refused them all. Both of them bowed to Guan. And Shengtian curiously looked at Guan. Since entering the valley, this was the first time Guan had summoned him. Although he didn't think the nascent soul realm was very impressive, Jiangshi always mentioned Guan and was no ordinary man, which made him quite curious about Guan. Jiangshi looked at Guan, his eyes concealing none of his admiration. Thinking back to that majestic scene 3 years ago, his heart surged with emotion. What loose immortal Master must be Sword Venerable Fudao. No one in the entire Supreme Sect knew about Sword Venerable Fudao's hidden identity. Yet Guan hid his cultivation. It was too coincidental. Shengtian, have you felt any discomfort lately? Guan asked, his face wearing a gentle smile. He had laughed aloud when he first heard the name and Shengtian. This young man, wanting to surpass and how could that be possible? Not to mention the talent. Guan would never allow his proud disciple to be surpassed by a junior. No matter how many strong and talented individuals he had seen, and how still remained his proudest disciple in Gu An's heart, even compared to the absolute geniuses in Lu Han and Long Zhan's memories, and how lost to no one. He calculated the days, and how was getting closer and closer to the Nirvana realm. After receiving the heavenly Tao inheritance in the Holy Court, and Hao's cultivation had surged like floodwaters through a broken dam, unstoppable in its growth. No discomfort, Master. Have you noticed anything? And Shengtian asked nervously. The curse of the infamily was still a shadow over his heart. He also feared suddenly dropping dead. Chapter 396. The origin of the surname in Figures upon the River of Destiny. Watching the utterly nervous and Shengtian, Guan reined in his smile and said, "You can only live to 25. At these words, and Shengtian's face drastically changed. Over the years, his cultivation level had risen rapidly, giving him hope, only to be told that he could only live to 25. How could he accept that? Jiang Shi was equally frightened. He couldn't see any issues within Shengtian, but he wouldn't question Gu An's judgment. He quickly asked, "Master, is there really no solution? Can immortal cultivation change fate?" Guan answered, "There is, and it's to sever your karmic ties and bloodline with Hao. By doing so, from now on, the infamily will forget you as if you were never born into their world, though those unrelated to the infamily could still remember you." And Shengtian was stunned, and Jiang Shi was also scared. What kind of method was this? Jiang Shi, recalling that Guan was Sword Venerable Fudao, immediately calmed down, while Shengtian grew curious about the real identity of Gu and sever them. Then sever them. I am willing. And Shengtian gritted his teeth. Although, over the years, under Jiang Shi's guidance, his hostility towards Hao had waned, he still didn't acknowledge Hao in his heart. In his view, Hao's bloodline was far from a glory, but a shame instead. Guan said, "Think about your deceased father, your grandfather, and also your mother, your sister. They will all forget you." And Shengtian opened his mouth, but couldn't be as resolute as before. Guan had Jiang Shi make tea for him. He wanted to see what decision Shengtian would make. Although Jiang Shi wanted to interject, he understood the meaning behind Gu An's instruction to pour tea. He was to stay out of it. And Shengtian clenched his fists, his mind filled with memories of time spent with his family. Unwilling. Why should he? Suddenly, Shengtian decided to accept his fate, just like the two words left by Hao. Resigned. But when he thought of the deep hatred born from his father's and grandfather's blood, he couldn't convince himself. How could he protect his living family members without strong cultivation? Just as Guan was about to lift the tea that Jiang Shi had brewed, and Shengtian said solemnly, "Sever. I must sever. I need to become stronger. Even if they forget me, I must have the strength to protect them. They may not remember me, but as long as I remember them, that is enough." A look of gratification flashed in Gu An's eyes, at least for now, and Shengtian thought more about protecting his family rather than revenge. He didn't oppose Shengtian's desire for revenge, but he hoped that revenge wouldn't be the sole purpose of Shengtian's life. Guan drank the tea in one go and then stood up, his gaze falling upon Shengtian. The gold pattern on his forehead began to emit a golden light, as if an eye had appeared on his forehead, leaving Shengtian and Jiang Shi wide-eyed. Boom! The scene around them abruptly changed, removing the pavilion's furnishings from their view, and they found themselves in a space that was surreal and eerie. The two instinctively turned their heads, but could see nothing. They just felt an inexplicable panic. Guan picked up the fate-determining pin, pointing it at Enchangtian. Enchangtian had seen the fate-determining pin before and hadn't thought much of it. But at this moment, it seemed so terrifying. Jiang Shi felt the same, and looking again at the crown on Guan's head, he also felt its extraordinary nature. Could it be that his master was a treasure all over? His eyes were full of awe and fervor, wishing he could prostrate himself to his master right there. To cultivate under such a powerful figure, he felt so fortunate. "Are you ready, Enchangtian?" Guan asked emotionlessly, causing Enchangtian's throat to bob. "I forgot to tell you," Guan said, "the Inyuran family is taken from my name. Even if the In family forgets you, as long as you follow me, you will never be separated from the In family." These words made Enchangtian's eyes widen in disbelief. Sword Venerable Fudao. Enchangtian felt like he had been hit by a pleasant surprise. Just as he was about to speak, Guan suddenly brandished his pen, and with a single stroke, Enchangtian felt as though he had been struck by lightning, his entire body frozen in place. His complexion drastically changed. He wanted to speak, but found himself incapable. He could feel something being shed from him. No, being abandoned. An endless tide of loneliness overwhelmed him, and he fell into an unprecedented fear, his eyes unexpectedly brimming over with tears. At that moment, he was like a lost child, wanting to crouch down and hold himself. Your talent may not equal Hao's, but can your will surpass his? Guan's voice reached him, like dawn's light chasing away the darkness from Enchangtian's inner world. Enchangtian looked up to see Guan and Jiang Shi standing before him. Jiang Shi looking anxious and seemingly trying to say something, but Enchangtian couldn't hear a thing. His gaze rested on Guan, who was looking back at him calmly. For some reason, he didn't feel distanced. Instead, he sensed a kind of power. "I cannot let down my master's expectations." Enchangtian gritted his teeth and forcefully suppressed the negative emotions in his heart, his body trembling as if he were in a chilly cellar. At that moment, Guan's brow furrowed, and he shifted his right foot. Suddenly, an explosive burst of demonic qi enveloped the surrounding space. Jiang Shi turned his head, looking towards Guan with astonishment. Guan remained silent, waiting for the threads of Enchangtian's fate to be stripped away. Aren't you afraid of the heavenly Taoist backlash, Taoist friend, for changing the fate of a person entangled with the karma of the heavenly Tao? An indifferent voice came from outside the demonic qi, startling Jiang Shi into hastily turning around. How could there be someone else? Guan lifted his head, his gaze piercing through the demonic qi, crossing the void, to peer into another mysterious and dark space. Within it flowed a magnificent river, emanating radiant auroras, neither its source nor endpoint visible. The River of Destiny. A figure stood atop the River of Destiny. The figure shone with a silvery light, with only their silhouette discernible. Guan couldn't see through to their true form, but he could sense the other had locked onto his position. He had already employed the supreme concealing void technique, rendering the space around him impenetrable to peering eyes. Thus, he wasn't worried. Moreover, the River of Destiny was incredibly distant from him. The other party was merely communicating, with no intention of descending into the great heavenly spirit land. "Do you wish to warn or stop me?" Guan asked. The voice of the silvery figure carried through. "I intend to warn. I drift within the River of Destiny and cannot descend upon the world. You need not worry. I can see that you, Taoist friend, have stepped onto the way of cause and effect. One day, we shall meet. I will await you by the River of Destiny." Guan seemed to think of something. His expression turned strange as he continued to ask, "May I know the name of my Taoist friend?" "I have no Taoist title, only a common name, which is likely unknown. My name is Lu Qiuxian." Hearing the name, Guan fell silent. Jiang Shi didn't even dare to breathe too heavily. The River of Destiny, the way of cause and effect, and Lu Qiuxian. Just the sound of it was terrifying. Is this the world of the Immortal Path realm? While shocked, Jiang Shi felt an unprecedented ambition and resolve stirring within him. Chapter 397. The Escaper of the Heavenly Tao, Lu Qiuxian. Guan fell into silence, his thoughts drifting to Lu Han within the reincarnation evolution. The turning point in Lu Han's life was the birth of Lu Qiuxian. With a talent that surpassed all others, the only thing Lu Han did before his death was to resurrect Lu Qiuxian in the River of Destiny. Listening to Lu Qiuxian's words, Guan could feel his vicissitudes. It was hard to imagine the long and desolate years he had endured alone. Having all of Lu Han's memories, Guan naturally felt differently about Lu Qiuxian. In his eyes, Lu Qiuxian was his son. Guan even speculated that the reason why reincarnation evolution came to be might simply be that it was originally real, just as the free immortal had to experience the reincarnation tribulation. The reincarnation tribulation of the free immortal would also lead to rebirth in different times and spaces, and the time span of reincarnation evolution was even larger, indicating a higher level of reincarnation tribulation. Guan reined in his thoughts and spoke. Thank you for the reminder, Daoist friend. My name is Meng Lang. Should I have the chance to visit the River of Destiny in the future, we can discuss and exchange Daoist sorcery. Above the River of Destiny, Lu Qiuxian, emitting a silver glow, did not immediately respond. He stood there, like an afterimage, about to vanish into the torrent of destiny. After a while, all right, Lu Qiuxian agreed, and then disappeared into thin air above the River of Destiny. Gu An's gaze shifted to Enchanting, watching as he detached from the causality of the family. Jiang Shi's mind wandered, curious about Lu Qiuxian's cultivation level. Do not mention what just occurred to anyone, including Shengtan, Guan suddenly said. Upon hearing this, Jiang Shi hurriedly promised to keep the matter to himself. In fact, even without Gu An's instruction, he had no intention of sharing it with others. Witnessing such great power was his own fortune. How could he share it with others? Time continued to pass, and Enchanting was immersed in his own pain, unaware of what had just transpired. He could only make out the vague figures of Gu and another. He gritted his teeth and persisted as the memories of the family in his mind became increasingly blurred, which frightened him. He could accept the family forgetting him, but he could not forget them. If both sides forgot each other, they would truly become unconnected, which was not the outcome he desired. Master, martial master, and Enchanting gritted his teeth, his cry not for the Valley Master of Mystic Valley, but for Enhao's master, Sword Venerable Fudao. Focus your mind. As long as you miss them enough, you won't forget. Gu An's voice followed. He had his own motives, deliberately tempering Enchanting, hoping Enchanting would hold family ties in the highest regard to prevent him from opposing Enhao in the future. In his heart, Enhao was definitely more important. Without Enhao, there would be no Enchanting. Hearing Gu An's words, Enchanting persisted. Suddenly, with a boom, blood flame abruptly ignited on him. His body curled up and trembled incessantly. Guan raised his right hand, and a dark purple medicinal herb appeared, promptly turning into powder that hovered in his palm, forming a whirlwind. Jiang Shi couldn't help but fix his gaze on the whirlwind in Gu An's palm, curious about what Guan was about to do. Guan then swung his palm toward Enchanting. As the palm struck out, Enchanting's flesh instantly dispersed, leaving only a skeleton behind, which startled Jiang Shi. Before he could utter a word, a dark purple mist surrounded Enchanting, quickly enveloping him and covering the skeleton. Jiang Shi looked intently, his hands clenched into fists inside his sleeves, his heart in turmoil, fearful that Enchanting would die right there. The scene was too frightening. Flesh had dispersed in an instant. Could a person still live? The dark purple mist soon submerged the skeleton, billowing and slowly forming the outline of flesh. That is, Jiang Shi's eyes widened. his expression one of astonishment. Guin remained expressionless. This was a ninth-tier medicinal herb, which he had acquired at great cost. It contained vast spiritual energy, making the molding of a flesh body not challenging, as long as Enshengxin's life force was controlled. If his soul had not left the body, it would be manageable. A new life and destiny. What path will you take from here? Guin wondered to himself, also contemplating whether Enshengxin's maximum lifespan would increase. If it could, this act would also be a method of defying the heavens and changing one's fate. Inside the attic, Guin sat in a chair, his eyes filled with disappointment. Enchanting, Foundation Establishment, Realm 8th Floor, 20/350/5000. His cultivation level had increased, as had his lifespan, but his maximum lifespan had not. That is to say, replacing bloodlines was not a way to change maximum lifespan. The concept of maximum lifespan became even more complex in Guin's eyes. Luckily, Enchanting was considered as having defied fate, breaking free from the destiny of the infamily. Master, may I take him down? Jiang Shi, holding Enchanting and wearing an anxious expression, asked. Enchanting was covered in a robe for modesty and had not yet awakened. Guin nodded, and Jiang Shi sighed with relief, signaling that Enchanting was already out of danger. He immediately carried Enchanting away. After leaving the house, he also closed the door behind him. Guin then began to ponder about Lu Qiuxian. After Lu Han was executed by the Black Profound Emperor, how did Lu Qiuxian survive? There must have been many stories behind it. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away from the Supreme Sect, carriages progressed across the mountains. Sienna was meditating on the floor of a carriage when she suddenly opened her eyes, frowning. What's going on? This feeling, what exactly is it? Why can't I remember? Sienna mumbled to herself, experiencing an inexplicable sense of emptiness within her. In the carriage behind her, a mother and daughter felt the same, clutching their chests in silence, sinking into an indescribable sadness, without understanding what was causing their grief. And Hao, who was far away in the Immortal dynasty, sensed it too. He abruptly opened his eyes, his brows furrowed in concern. He looked towards the setting sun in the distance, his gaze filled with confusion. He sat meditating on a cliff, his body entwined with chains of golden light, unable to stand up. Who is trying to sever the karma with me? And Hao wondered in surprise, having delved into the way of cause and effect since he had received the legacy of the heavenly Tao. However, his understanding of the way of cause and effect was still weak, lacking the power to deduce its mysteries. As he couldn't figure it out, he attributed the penalization to the Immortal dynasty, deciding not to dwell on it and continued his path enlightenment. Oppressed by the Immortal dynasty, he did not panic, knowing that as long as his martial master was there, the Immortal dynasty would dare not act rashly. He was also astonished when he heard that his martial master had slain Autumn Equinox Immortal Lord, having met the man whose formidable aura had made a substantial impression. It was unimaginable to Hao that such a powerful being would be powerless before his martial master. He found that no matter how powerful an entity he encountered, how profound a force his heritage was, those seemingly invincible and unconquerable beings were like nothing before his martial master. He could not fathom just how strong his martial master truly was. He even looked forward to how the encounter would unfold if Yang Xian Emperor, the current publicly acknowledged #1 under the heavens, were to face his martial master. He believed his martial master could also be the first under the heavens. Thinking of his martial master's strength, and how cast aside his distractions, feeling a surge of fervor. He wanted to catch up to his martial master as soon as possible. As the days went by, New Year's Day arrived in the blink of an eye. At dawn, Mystic Valley began preparing for the festival. Enchanting was chopping wood in the forest, his hair tied high at the back of his head, revealing his stern features. A female disciple approached holding a teapot, looking at Enchanting hesitantly. "Senior brother, are you tired? Would you like some spiritual tea?" She observed Enchanting, her expression turning timidly coy. Demon Shore has developed hostility towards you, seeking to annihilate you. Do you wish to use lifespan detection on it? Chapter 398. The Lifespan of the Free Immortal. Demon Shore? Guin had never heard this name before, so he immediately chose to perform a lifespan detection on it. Demon Shore, Free Immortal Realm 9, Layers 58, 027, 612/500, 000, 000/1, 000, 000, 500 million years of lifespan, with a maximum lifespan of 1 billion years. Why did this person harbor animosity toward him? Could it be that Shunjun was so bizarre because he was being manipulated by this person? Guin looked at Shunjun standing before him, feigning astonishment. Shunjun slightly tilted his head to look at Guin and asked, "Is there a problem?" Although the voice was Shunjun's, the tone was definitely not. Guin pretended to be tense and replied, "No." Shunjun let go, then took a step to the side, casting a deep glance at Enchanting that made his heart unease. Shunjun smiled and then turned away. Enchanting took a deep breath, moved to Guin's side, and seemed about to say something, but Guin raised his hand, signaling him to hold his words. Once Shunjun had walked out of the grove, Guin's expression turned ice-cold. Martial Master Enchanting cautiously began, the look in Shunjun's eyes just now filling him with dread, as if a natural predator had set its sights on him, even making him feel a major disaster was imminent. "It doesn't matter." Guin uttered 2 words, and upon hearing them, Enchanting immediately relaxed. The phrase Martial Master was enough. Enchanting knew well that Guin was Sword Venerable Fudao. Thinking back to the shocking Great Mixed Yuan plate from a few years ago, his spirit was immediately uplifted. With a martial master backing him, what was there to fear? His task was to diligently cultivate, striving to surpass and make his martial master proud of him. Guin patted Enchanting on the shoulder, encouraging him to continue. Enchanting looked at Guin's departing figure and raised a hand to his own shoulder, chuckling softly. The upcoming spring festival remained lively. Although Guin was thinking about Demon Shore, he still acted naturally, actively celebrating with his disciples. Because of the intervention a few years ago by Sword Venerable Fudao, which greatly lessened the chaos in Taitsong Continent, the recent spring festivals have been lively, especially for the disciples of the Supreme Sect, who on such days would rid their minds of worries and start harboring hopes for the future. Until late into the night, Third Medicine Valley, in the attic, Guin sat at the desk, eyes closed, his divine thought frenziedly scanning the great heavenly spirit land. Unable to find a cause and effect similar to Shunjun, he extended his divine thought into the universe. Though Demon Shore's cultivation level was inferior to his, being hated by someone was intolerable. Especially since the opponent hated his original self. He must die to prevent future troubles. That night, the person with the worst mood within the Supreme Sect was none other than the strongest among them. Until the early hours, Guin finally located Demon Shore. The bastard was actually hiding within the Silent Destruction domain, and he was harboring a large number of evil demons under his command, clearly having some sort of plan. Guin stood up, left the house, and walked downstairs. Just as he was downstairs, Ji Xiaoyu emerged from the house and called out to him. "What's up?" Guin asked with a smile. Ji Xiaoyu approached him, sizing him up. Guin touched his own face and asked, "Is there something wrong with me?" Ji Xiaoyu stared into his eyes and said, "There's a sense of death about you. Have you been marked by something corrupt?" Guin feigned nervousness as he asked, "Really? Don't frighten me." He knew Ji Xiaoyu was not wrong in her feeling. Ever since being targeted by Demon Shore the day before, a causal bond had latched onto him and was growing stronger. Guin had not dispelled the cause and effect on him, instead using it to trace Demon Shore. Perhaps it's just my imagination, Ji Xiaoyu suggested, seeing his panicked reaction. She was puzzled inside. What on earth had happened to Guan? Although she had regained some of her memories, she was not the original self, able to only sense the cause and effect on Guan, but not fully see through it. Always scaring me. Later when I go out, they'll be worried the whole way. Guan complained sullenly. Then don't go out. Puzzled, with your current resources inexhaustible, why do you still take charge of so many medicine valleys? You don't understand, this is life. To be human, one needs to do things to feel grounded. Humph, you're definitely hiding secrets. Don't you follow me? If I catch you, we are through. This is called privacy rights, understand? Who gave you privacy rights? Granted by the heavens. Do you dare to question it? The two began to bicker again, and after Ji Xiaoyu twisted his arm a few times, Guan finally fled. Ji Xiaoyu watched his retreating figure, her brows furrowed deeply, her heart filled with worry, sensing that Guan was heading for great trouble. Guan headed toward the transmission array platform, along the way seeing Long Qing heading out of the valley. Going out to box again? Guan asked with a smile. Long Qing, who had been practicing with Shen Xinzi for years, had reached a horrifying level of physical strength. His chi blood was so powerful it even surpassed the void-crossing realm. Sadly, his body contained not a trace of spiritual power. Long Qing stopped in his tracks, faced Guan, and nodded slightly. He revealed a proud expression and said, "In half a year, my second martial master will take me out to hunt demons. I will be able to fight to my heart's content." Guan did not admonish him, merely nodding before expressing a few words of concern and letting him go. Watching Long Qing walk away, Guan thought of enchanting. The number of juniors in Medicine Valley had been increasing. He wondered what the scene would look like in 1,000 years. He smiled and continued towards the transmission array platform. Upon reaching Mystic Valley, he glanced at Lu Jujia and then left alone. He walked through the forest, and gradually, a figure emerged from his body, a split of his divine skills. He allowed his split form to replace his original self, while his true form entered a state difficult for immortals to divine. The split form continued forward leisurely, while the original form leapt out of great heavenly spirit land and descended into the silent destruction domain in an incomprehensible manner to living beings. In the depths of the silent destruction domain, where it was incredibly dark without stars, just swells of dense fog, as if from the primordial chaos, suffocatingly oppressive. In the darkness stood a city, silent and hanging, resembling a giant armored beast. The surface of the buildings had sharp, towering columns, frighteningly ominous. Inside a grand hall within the city, demonic chi swirled like mist. At the center sat a pool over 30 feet in diameter, the surface a bright red. A figure was meditating in the pool. She was a white-haired woman, her body bare, with long hair cascading down her front into the waters. Her back was as white and smooth as jade, perfectly contoured. This was Demon Shore. She sat with her eyes closed, her face stunningly beautiful, except for a trace of wicked aura between her brows. Suddenly, she opened her eyes, exclaiming in surprise, "How did that boy's cause and effect get severed?" Lifting her right hand, she began to deduce. Just then, a hand landed on her fair shoulder. The touch made her Taoist heart tremble, and her face drastically change. "Why are you looking for someone?" A raspy voice entered her ears, chilling her to the bone. How could this be? Demon Shore was terrified to find herself completely immobile, her mana almost frozen. She was a free immortal of 9 layers. How could she be so utterly suppressed? Could it be that the other party? Thinking of the legends, she resisted her fear and asked through gritted teeth, "Who? Who are you?" If you can see great heavenly spirit land with her eyes, could you also hear certain things with her ears? Guan stood behind Demon Shore, leaning slightly forward. Enshrouded with a gray aura, his true appearance concealed, he looked mysteriously formidable. Hearing his words, Demon Shore carefully recalled. She quickly thought of Shanjun, who often mentioned a person. Sword Venerable Fudao. Her impression of this person was very deep, deeming him a possible free immortal. But she had not calculated against Sword Venerable Fudao. Though free immortals differed, she was one who had stepped into reincarnation tribulation, even if not yet successfully, but at least she was trying. Sword Venerable Fudao. The longer Gu N's hand pressed down, the more frantic she became. In her perception, Gu An's Dao level was unfathomable, and compared to his, her way of cause and effect was insignificant. Guan could feel her fear. He deliberately gave her time to experience panic, fear, and regret. After all, Guan had been worried about her hostility all night. Killing her directly would be too lenient. He gazed down at Demon Shore, taking in her entire form. Nice skin, too bad she provoked him. Die. Gu N's gaze intensified as he furiously infused his divine thought into her body, impacting her soul, probing her memory. Demon Shore's body trembled, quickly settling into calmness. The grand hall fell silent. Even the swirling demonic chi halted. After a long while, Guan withdrew his divine thought, exerting a slight force with his right hand. Demon Shore instantly turned into ash, a shockwave spreading that caused countless tiny stars to appear in the demonic mist. Those were the shattered remnants of Demon Shore's Dao. Guan pondered over Demon Shore's memories, filled with emotion. So the reincarnation tribulation held such mysteries. Demon Shore was not only reborn herself, but also could choose a mortal for rebirth. Shenzhen was her choice, and she chose him after he had grown up. The reason for choosing Shenzhen was his innate talent for the way of cause and effect and the uncertainty surrounding him. Demon Shore couldn't see why the uncertainties around Shenzhen originated, initially not even considering Sword Venerable Fudao. Until years ago, during the Supreme Chaos Disc, she confirmed that Sword Venerable Fudao was the uncertainty surrounding Shenzhen. She was surprised, but not shocked. Until Enchangtian appeared. Using Shenzhen's body, she sensed its cause and effect and was instantly moved. She even wanted to usurp Enchangtian's body. Thinking of the seductive she-demon becoming a man, Guan felt somewhat awkward. Fortunately, in Demon Shore's memories, she was always a woman. Otherwise, he would feel awkward seeing Shenzhen in the future. You have successfully seized 61,098,203 years of lifespan from Demon Shore, free immortal realm, 9 layers. A prompt appeared before Guan, seizing over 60 million years of lifespan in one go. Not bad. Worthy of a free immortal. Would killing Taoist hidden immortals in the future bring in hundreds of millions of years of lifespan? Guan looked forward with anticipation, but for now, he did not want to confront Taoist hidden immortals. He would rather accumulate lifespan through medicinal herbs. It was safer to grow stronger unnoticed and avoid much hatred. Chapter 399 Supreme Demon Realm. The memories from Demon Shore were vast, and the greatest help to Guan was in her understanding of reincarnation tribulation. Reincarnation tribulation indeed allows one to be reborn into different times and spaces, even into the past, but whether it's the past or the future, the main Bodhi's power cannot intervene. When the reincarnated being dies or exerts the power of the main body, it will be forcibly expelled back by the heavenly Tao. This reminded Gu and of the time when Ji Xiaoyu in the 7-star spirit realm had used the power of a primordial Taoist talisman and then quickly disappeared. It seemed she was expelled by the reincarnation tribulation. This deepened Gu An's understanding of the heavenly Tao. Heavenly Tao more closely resembles a collection of rules and the grand Tao, meticulous and domineering. Guan stopped pondering and turned her gaze toward the interior of the great hall. The hall was vast, yet there were many stark differences hidden within. Those huge stone pillars were also inlaid with numerous special spirit stones. This city was none other than Demon City. According to the memories of Demon Shore, There were many such cities in the silent destruction domain. Although there was no stronger existence above Demon Shore, all the demon cities were remnants of power left by the Supreme Demon Realm. The Supreme Demon Realm had once been extremely powerful, aiming to devour the great heaven and earth, but was later struck down by a mysterious entity that slayed the realm master, causing it to shatter. At that time, Demon Shore was not yet fully grown. A million demons hid within the demon city. Although these demons seemed no different from the heavenly demons to the creatures of the great heaven and earth, there were also many powers standing within the silent destruction domain, and they did not trespass into the territories of the Blood Prison Great Saint. Guin decided to eradicate the root of the problem and eliminate all these demons. Whenever creatures from the great heaven and earth passed near the demon city, they never met a good fate. Demon Shore even dared to attack passing free immortals, though the free immortals had their own means to escape. The attacked free immortal was actually the ancient immortal emperor from the Immortal dynasty. Approaching noon, Guin returned to the Third Medicine Valley. He called up his attribute panel. Name, Guin, lifespan, 650/1, 954, 210, 604, physique, mixed yuan refined void body, cultivation level, perfect Taoist hidden immortal realm. By slaying the million evil demons in the demon city, he gained nearly 500 million years of lifespan, making this trip an enormous harvest. Looking at his lifespan approaching 2 billion years, Guin felt wonderfully good. Of course, the most important thing was that he had removed a source of worry. As Guin encountered disciples along the way, he would smile and ask them a few questions, leaving the disciples surprised and honored. Now the number of disciples in the Third Medicine Valley exceeded 3,000, and many, even those who had reached the Foundation Establishment realm, were willing to stay. As the Supreme Sect grew stronger, the treatment in the Third Medicine Valley also continued to rise, even higher than that of many intersect halls. The disciples all respected Guin, not for his status or cultivation level, but because he treated each disciple without pretense. Even when they heard Guin enjoyed reading common books, they found him all the more approachable since Guin did not coerce the female disciples, and he was well regarded. When Guin arrived at his pavilion, Ji Xiaoyu suddenly came out, her expression strange. "What's wrong now?" Guin asked in feigned dejection. Ji Xiaoyu replied, "The death energy around you has disappeared. Who did you go see this morning?" Guin looked around, then took 2 steps forward and mysteriously said, "You scared me, so I had to ask Sword Venerable Fudao for help. He cast a spell to keep me safe at the cost of 300 years of my lifespan." Ji Xiaoyu believed the first part of his statement, but she couldn't help but roll her eyes at the last sentence. Mortals will be mortals. With Sword Venerable Fudao's cultivation, how could he covet your 300 years of lifespan? Such a narrow view, it's laughable even when you boast. Ji Xiaoyu's words were venomous, unaware that this was exactly the effect Guin wanted. "You look down on me? In 30 years the East River may flow west. Do not belittle the poor. Change 30 to thousands. Get inside, I need to sort you out." Guin pushed Ji Xiaoyu into the house, and she did not resist, her face even breaking into a smile. An hour later, Guin came out of her house. Passing by, an Xian winked and teased Guin, causing him to glare at her. Blood Prison Great Saint watched from under a distant tree, sighing sentimentally. The master indeed leads a charming life. Once 1,000 years pass, I too must enjoy the local customs of the great heavenly spirit land. The spring breeze was caressing, the weather cool, and all living things were awakening their vitality. Even the clouds that shrouded the continent's sky had dissipated some. The Supreme Sect, basking in the prestige of Sword Venerable Fudao, continued to develop, but the struggles of the world grew more intense. Every moment, cultivators from the Immortal dynasty and the Holy Court were fighting, with more and more territories and powers being drawn into the fray. Half a year sped by swiftly. Guin stood by the window, watching Long Qing follow Shun Xinzi out of the valley. Apart from his previous experiences in the Jiyuan world, This was Long Qing's first time leaving the Supreme Sect. Although he was just practicing on the Taicang continent, the sight of the young man's excitement gave Gu a distinct feeling reluctant to let him go. Ji Xiaoyu's teasing voice came from downstairs. Guan replied, "How could that be? It just reminded me of some old friends. Do you wish for the people by your side to accompany you forever?" "No, not really. If they leave, they leave. There will always be newcomers. I just feel nostalgic about how quickly they grow up. They become capable of standing on their own in the blink of an eye." "HM, what do you mean by newcomers? When I'm gone, there will be new ones." "What are you talking about? You haven't even outlasted the old ones yet." Boom! The attic began to tremble slightly. Outside the courtyard, the blood prison great saint, who was lying down asleep, turned his head. Such noise couldn't affect him. He was already used to it. An hour later, Gu En, accompanied by an Exine and the blood prison great saint, left the Third Medicine Valley. Today, they were heading to Tianya Valley. On the way, an Exine spoke of the rising talents on the continent. From time to time, a peerless genius would emerge, and individuals like Hao, Liya, and Wu Ju had already been forgotten by many, just as Guan had once been unaware of Xian Tianyi. Guan rode on the back of the blood prison great saint, holding a book in his hand, occasionally echoing an accent. He also paid attention to the recent happenings in the world. Compared to the world hundreds of years ago, the standard for genius had risen. The cultivators in Xin referred to as geniuses had cultivation levels at the very least within the void crossing realm. Hundreds of years ago, those of the void crossing realm were considered great cultivators, old monsters. Nowadays, the nirvana realm was no longer a secret known to just a few. An Xin spoke of the affairs of the world with no longing in her tone, only anticipation. She didn't want to go out. She just wanted to become more formidable than those people, to prove that staying by her master's side was the best choice. They chatted and laughed along the way, making the journey seem less tedious. When they arrived at Tianya Valley, they saw a group of young and proud cultivators. When Gu En and his companions appeared, they attracted the attention of most. Guan saw LV Xian among them. It had been quite a while since he had seen LV Xian, because every time LV Beitian met him, he would mention LV Xian, making Guan occasionally keep track of LV Xian's progress. LV Xian had always been highly talented, and coupled with favorable circumstances, he now possessed the cultivation level of the mystic heart realm. He looked from afar at Guan with a joyous expression on his face. Guan nodded slightly towards him, then dismounted and walked toward Li Zuando's courtyard. An Xin went with the blood prison great saint to meet the three monkey demons. Guan proceeded into the courtyard, walked up to the table, and saluted Li Xiandao with a cupped fist. Following Li Zuando's gesture, he sat down. Li Xiandao appraised Guan and asked with a smile, "Why do I feel you've changed again?" Guan replied, "Perhaps I've aged a bit more." As Guan grew older, his relationship with Li Xiandao became less about seniority and more like that of equals. It wasn't that Gu An's outward cultivation was particularly strong, but both were several centuries old. Their life journeys were continually advancing. For those who lived for thousands or tens of thousands of years, people aged 500 to 1,000 years were considered peers, and this concept subtly influenced them as well. The two exchanged pleasantries, having not seen each other for many years. LV Xian was a supreme talent, and so was Li Xiandao, whose cultivation had reached the Mahayana realm. His Mahayana realm cultivation had outstripped LV Beitian, who used to have a higher cultivation level than Li Xiandao, but had failed his tribulation crossing and remained at the 9th layer of the unification realm. Seeing Li Zuando's growth rate, Guan felt gratified. After all, they were comrades in the Tao, and how could he not be delighted to see his Taoist friend's progress? How many of his old companions would still be alive in 10,000 years? Guan was not sure, but he felt that Li Xiandao had a strong chance. Ancient emperors of tens of thousands of years were not unheard of. Just look at the Yangxian emperor of the Immortal dynasty, or Shang Tian of the Holy Court. all of whom ruled for more than 1,000,000 years. After chatting for a while, Li Xiandao suddenly sighed. How many years will it take for the Taitsong dynasty to become an existence like the Immortal dynasty? The current chaos in the world is the best opportunity, but it's a pity we are not strong enough and might miss such a chance. The dynamic of the world changed day by day, but a dynasty's accumulation could not speed up as quickly, which made Li Xiandao anxious. If they missed this chance and a new ruler emerged, the Taitsong dynasty would never have its day, at best dominating only a single region. Guan hadn't expected that Li Xiandao would actually harbor ambitions to replace Yangxian Emperor in Xingtian. That was quite daring. Given Li Zuando's position of power, he surely understood the strength of the Immortal dynasty and the Holy Court. For others, faced with such a gap, they would only feel envious or awed. As for replacing them, how could one even think of that? What if this chaos lasts for many years? This is a chaos that affects the entire world. Compared to the world at large, isn't the Taitsong continent minuscule? Guan consoled. Li Xiandao looked at Guan and suddenly asked, if there were a very powerful force that could aid me, but accepting their help could be a hidden danger in the future, what would you choose if you were the emperor? A very powerful force? Guan silently reasoned, instantly realizing that the force Li Xiandao mentioned was a great sect, one of the leading sects in the mortal world. They chose the Taitsong dynasty with the aim of establishing a relationship with Sword Venerable Fudao. If they could control the Taitsong dynasty, they would have better grounds and opportunities to contact Sword Venerable Fudao. In their eyes, Sword Venerable Fudao had the qualifications to contend against the Yangxian Emperor. This was an indispensable force for them, aspiring to surpass both the Immortal dynasty and the Holy Court. Without free immortals, how could one dream of unifying the world? After Guan had calculated the variables, he responded, it all depends on what you truly want, whether you wish for peace for the people of the world or if you desire to realize your own ambitions more. LV Xian glared at him and said impatiently, there are many geniuses, but the only one I have a good relationship with is you. I wouldn't give it to Hao. You have supreme talent, yet you can restrain your competitive spirit and live in seclusion here. I think you becoming an immortal would be better. At least you wouldn't threaten me, and you are indeed very good to your friends. Although Guan was curious, he felt that this matter was very dangerous, so he said, actually, His Majesty's talent is also very strong. After hearing this, LV Xian's eyes brightened as he said, you noticed it too? I thought I was the only one who knew. But don't tell him I know. Haha, don't worry. He still thinks he's hidden himself well enough, not realizing that you are the deepest enigma. Think about it. It makes sense that Sword Venerable Fudao has always stayed at Supreme Sect, certainly to cultivate you. And Hao claims to be a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao, but he left and Sword Venerable Fudao is still here. That must mean he's just riding on your coattails. LV Xian chuckled, truly believing that Guan was stronger than Hao. He had sparred with both of them, and Guan had given him the greatest sense of oppression and psychological shadow. He even believed that Guan was the #1 genius under the heavens. Hearing this, Guan fell into silence, his gaze fixed on a stone slab. Wait, should he use his lifespan to simulate this? Guan thought it feasible as touching the stone slab directly seemed too dangerous. His mind made up, he immediately began to simulate. Simulating the inheritance will consume 1,000,000 years of lifespan. Do you wish to continue? That much. Guan hesitated, but looking at the stone slab, he was really tempted. Forget it. Take the plunge. While LV Xian continued his incessant chatter, Guan chose to continue, and then his consciousness entered a vast white space. Everything was blank, and below his feet, grass first emerged, rapidly expanding, and mountains appeared in the distance in all directions. The world was vast, and the sky magnificent. Guin looked ahead and saw atop the mountains a dazzling orb of light, immensely gigantic, much larger than any mountain on earth. Within the light orb, there stood a towering figure, 10,000 zhang in height, adorned in armor, wielding a divine weapon, exuding a domineering aura that overwhelmed all living beings. Upon seeing this figure, Guin felt threatened, and he couldn't help but think of Black Profound Emperor, whom Lu Han encountered, and Annihilation God Emperor, whom Long Zhan encountered. Their auras were similar. What realms were they actually in? Mortal spirit, having seen the heavenly Tao, why not kneel? A majestic voice rang out, but Guin did not kneel since it was just a simulation, and he asked, "What inheritance is this?" "This is the heavenly Tao immortal position inheritance. To gain my approval, you must defeat me." Defeat. Guin was surprised internally. Facing this entity, LV surely had no chance at all, let alone even the desire to fight. Wait, LV said that the inheritance only looked at talent. Could it be that facing different inheritors, this entity's cultivation level might also change? LV failed against an existence a great realm higher than his own. He was now facing an existence a realm higher than Taoist hidden immortal. No wonder it felt dangerous, yet not hopeless. What is heavenly Tao immortal position? Guin pressed on. The other did not respond. Guin asked other questions, but no matter what he asked, there was no response. Forget it. Then fight to see if he had the strength to pass the inheritance test. Inside the cave, LV gestured to Guin, whose eyes suddenly became clear. "What were you thinking about? I asked you several times, and you didn't respond," LV said with dissatisfaction. Guin smiled and replied, "Nothing much. I was just wondering whether there really are immortals and gods." He had passed the test. It had to be said that entity was indeed formidable. Guin had to use dozens of moves to completely vanquish it. Yet, even after the victory, Guin still hadn't figured out what the heavenly Tao immortal position was. But one thing was certain: the stone slab inheritance could see through his true cultivation level. If there was an immortal god power behind it, that power could also understand his true strength through this stone slab. The last thing Guin wanted was for his true cultivation level to be seen through. "Forget it. I can't accept it. But don't worry, I won't tell anyone." Guin shook his head. LV eyes widened as he said, "This is an immortal god inheritance. If you succeed, you will soar to great heights." Guin replied, "I only trust the mana that I have cultivated myself, not that given by others. If so, I would certainly be controlled by others at the risk of my life and freedom." Hearing this, LV furrowed his brows. He had to admit, Guin made a good point. With that statement from Guin, the excitement in his heart began to subside. He looked at the stone slab on the table and said in a low voice, "Well said, perhaps failing the inheritance was a blessing in disguise." "Hey, you brat, are you looking for a spanking? Just go back to the Supreme Sect and see your father. He treats me well and is always talking about you. My ears are almost calloused. If you go, they'll teach you a divine skill that will definitely enhance your strength." Really, I would never lie. And so, the two chatted and walked out of the cave. Back in the valley, Guin reverted to being an ordinary nascent soul realm cultivator, while LV continued to exude the arrogance of a supreme youth. A month later, LV Batian came to find Guin extremely happy, pulling him to drink because LV had come to see him. Although the father and son were still not on the best of terms, their relationship had begun to improve. He was touched to learn from LV that it was Guin who had asked LV to see him. This youngster always seemed impatient with his ramblings, but in his heart, he remembered his father's love. LV Batian looked at Gu and with eyes full of fondness, as if looking at another son. Guin didn't refuse, as he was just in the mood for a drink. Perhaps this was what meant by "with great power comes great responsibility." He not only had to save the world, he also had to help people handle domestic affairs. How fortunate the immortal cultivation world was to have me. Filled with self-emotion, Guin then competed with LV Batian in a drinking contest, and finally LV Batian was defeated. They were drinking high-level spiritual wine. It was all right for Guin to show off his strength a bit, especially since LV Batian was not considered strong in the Supreme Sect. Taking advantage of LV Batian's drunken stupor, Guin went downstairs. Just as he descended, Ji Xiaoyu walked out of the room and said to him, "Come in." Guin shook his head. "No thanks, your strength isn't enough. Practice some more." Last time, to teach Ji Xiaoyu a lesson, Guin had played Go with her in her room for an hour and beat her decisively, which left her quite unconvinced, and now she would think about game strategies even during her practice. Just one more game, and you'll see if it's enough. Guin couldn't be bothered with her and continued walking toward the distance. Ji Xiaoyu watched his back, took a deep breath, and thought about the cost of losing the game last time. It made her teeth itch with frustration. Before the game, they had made a deal that if she won, Guin would focus more on his own practice, and if Guin won, he would pinch her face. Well, pinch it as it may be, he really dared to do it strongly. She looked at Guin's back, her mind full of confusion. Why in the world was his Go skill so strong? She finally understood why Nine-Finger Divine Lord couldn't maintain his composure in the Immortal Path realm when facing Guin. After walking some distance, Guin leaped up, aiming for the outer gate city. It had been ages since he last strolled in the city. Today, he might as well reinforce the sword intent on the heavenly repair platform. Too many people had been comprehending his sword intent, causing it to continuously weaken. Recently, even a divine immortal of wondrous Dharma had come to study it. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, another decade passed. That day, in the deep sea, hidden spirit palace, Guin lay on a chair on the open ground, holding the supreme secret records. The deep-sea dragon carp was beside him, practicing the heaven and earth primordial skill. This skill had been upgraded, but being too complex was in fact not beneficial, and his disciples were all practicing it. How could he allow the deep-sea dragon carp's treatment to exceed theirs? Even among his underlings, Tian Yaoer was the most important. The deep-sea dragon carp opened its eyes, flew next to Guin, and asked cautiously, "Master, I think I can shape-shift. What do you think I should turn into?" Guin turned over, his back facing it, and said, "Whatever you want." He didn't care if a male demon wanted to shape-shift. It didn't matter, even if it didn't. The deep-sea dragon carp caught a glimpse of a picture on the supreme secret records, pondered for a while, then turned and left. 2 ancient hours later, Guin left. By the time he returned, it was already half a month later. Upon return, he was taken aback. He saw a figure at the entrance of the hidden spirit palace. For a moment, he thought he saw a naked creature from the demon's shore. But this fellow was not a female demon. When the deep-sea dragon carp turned to look at Guin, its stunningly beautiful face flashed a captivating smile, its long hair reaching its waist, and its skin as white as snow, shimmeringly. He swayed his body as he walked towards Guin and immediately threw a robe at him. "Put this on immediately." Guin really wanted to scold him. A male demon turning into a female form. What was this nonsense? Absolutely disgusting. The deep-sea dragon carp, hearing the dissatisfaction in his voice, hurriedly put on the robe, looking at Guin nervously like he had done something wrong, his exceptionally beautiful face filled with a look of grievance. Chapter 4:02 Future. After a bit of tossing and turning, Guin looked at the deep-sea dragon carp, robed in white, and still felt awkward about it. The deep-sea dragon carp had tied up its hair, giving off the impression of a woman disguised as a man, because since it had shape-shifted, it could not change its appearance again. It could only be like this. The more Guin looked at him, the more familiar he seemed. Wait, wasn't this the same woman that Guin had encountered in the Supreme Secret Records? Guin spoke up. "From now on, don't dress as a woman anymore. There's no need to please me that way. I don't like it." The deep-sea dragon carp quickly nodded, although internally, he was puzzled. If Guin did not like it, why did he read such books? Seeing how wronged the creature looked, Guin began to instruct him on the practice of spells. Hearing that there were spells to practice, the deep-sea dragon carp immediately perked up, sweeping away his feelings of aggrievement and simultaneously gaining some insight. Although the shape-shifting of the deep-sea dragon carp was absurd, it didn't affect Guin's life. He already had 3 female demons, and no matter what form the deep-sea dragon carp took, it couldn't pique his interest. After spending half a day in the Hidden Spirit Palace, Guin then went to the Heavenly Phoenix Mountain, where he could harvest a batch of high-rank medicinal herbs from the Outer World Cave, which should grant him tens of millions of years to his lifespan. There was no distinction between day and night in the Outer World Cave. After harvesting the herbs, Guin began to instruct the 3 female Tian Yaoer on their cultivation. Years had passed, and Tian Yaoer's cultivation level had reached the 9th layer of the Mystic Heart Realm, and she was soon to assault the Mahayana realm. Her talent was exceptional, and with the abundance of high-rank medicinal herbs shared by Guin, her progress in cultivation naturally soared. Tian Qing and Tian Bai were less gifted than her and had just broken through to the unification realm. Their pace of cultivation was already fast, at least faster than that of demons, whose cultivation was not as quick as that of cultivators of human race. The demons' advantage lay in their long lifespans, but under Guin's care, the 3 demons' cultivation speed was comparable to that of top human prodigies. After sparring for an ancient hour, the 3 demons were depleted of their demonic power. Their demonic power was considered abundant within their respective realms, but facing Guin, they had to go all out. Watching them exhausted, lying on the ground, drenched in sweat, Guin hovered midair, pointing out their weaknesses. After a while, the 3 demons gathered around him, inquiring about the outside world. They still vividly remembered the recent attack by the Immortal Lord during the Mid-Autumn Festival, his booming voice and imposing pressure. They were curious about the types of changes unfolding in the outside world. The Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court are fighting fiercely. Not long ago, I heard that an immortal spirit effortlessly moved an entire sea area with one hand, with billions of creatures at his mercy. He fought against the great cultivator of the Holy Court with the ocean in his grasp. It was earth-shattering. Guin casually picked an event to recount, listening intently as the 3 demons did. What he spoke of were actual events. As time passed, casualties of the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court escalated, deepening the hate between them. If this continued, a battle that would sweep across the great heaven and earth was inevitable. Guin had calculated somewhat, fearing that the fight might cause heaven and earth to split apart. But with so many variables, he couldn't clearly discern all the choices of the free immortal or predict what was within the reincarnation tribulation of Xingtian. For the time being, it was impossible to see who would win or lose. Guin wasn't too worried, though, as Taicang Continent, where he resided, hadn't suffered much from the disturbances. For him, that was enough. As they listened to the tales of the world's vicissitudes, Tian Yaoer's heart yearned, but she did not propose to venture out. Her strength was still insufficient. It was mere curiosity. Seeing their interest, Guin spoke of a few more events. If it could strengthen their will to pursue immortal cultivation, Guin was naturally pleased. Snowflakes fell, marking the end of the year. The end of Lu Jujia's destined life had come. Guin and Lu Jujia sat at the edge of a cliff, overlooking Mystic Valley. Big brother, 600 years ago, did you ever think that Mystic Valley could ever achieve such prosperity? Lu Jujia asked with a chuckle, while stroking his beard, eyes filled with many distant images that transitioned from hazy to clear. From here, one could see disciples in the forests outside Mystic Valley, cultivated demon beasts, various brightly colored groves, all within a dozen miles of Mystic Valley's domain, thriving and booming. Guin replied, "Actually, I feel there isn't much difference between now and the past, because some people are still here, precisely, you're still here." The original acquaintances of Mystic Valley had dwindled to Lu Jujia alone. Once he passed on, Mystic Valley would become a closed chapter to Guin, or at least not as significant in his heart. Lu Jujia turned to look at Guin, feeling that his big brother's profile was still so youthful, as if time had left no trace on him. "Big brother, do you remember Suhan?" Lu Jujia suddenly asked. Guan glanced at him, replying, "How could I forget? Until now, no other disciple has taken a more crooked path than him." Mentioning Suhan stirred even more emotions in Guan. As the brothers talked about Suhan, Guan began to recognize the Suhan described by Lu Jujia. The snow grew heavier, and fog rose around Mystic Valley, gradually swallowing the sight of mortals. Lu Jujia's head sank lower, and his voice weakened. Jiang Shi stood in front of the wooden railing in the precinct, his gaze fixed on Lu Jujia atop the cliff, eyes brimming with reluctance. Last night, Lu Jujia had already talked with him. He knew that today, Lu Jujia was going to depart. Though they called each other martial brothers in Medicine Valley, in Jiang Shi's heart, Lu Jujia was like his second father. The pain in Jiang Shi's heart was overwhelming as his hands clenched the wooden railing tightly. And Xingtian emerged from the forest and was about to greet Jiang Shi when he caught the expression on Jiang's face, so Xingtian followed his gaze. Seeing the figures of Lu Jujia and Gu En, and Xingtian fell silent. He was quite fond of Lu Jujia as well, who had taken good care of him over the years. The thought of Lu Jujia's impending death weighed heavily on him. He even thought of his own father and grandfather. A somber and oppressive atmosphere permeated Mystic Valley. All the disciples guessed what was happening. They dared not speak of it, choosing instead to bury themselves in their own tasks. As dusk approached, Guan carried Lu Jujia down the mountain on his back, with the disciples gathering around in silence, watching Guan. Then, Guan began to bury Lu Jujia as all the disciples in the valley stood vigil. After the tombstone was erected, the disciples together bowed in homage to Lu Jujia. Under the veil of night, the accumulated snow on Gu An's attic suddenly slid off, crushing a wild by the staircase. 40 years later, the beginning of summer. In the outer gate city, the 700-year-old Gu An was at an inn, drinking with Wu Ju, who was 702. Wu Ju had just entered the mystic heart realm and was in high spirits, endlessly recounting his breakthrough experience. With the assistance of the Supreme Sect, he breezed through his advancement. You have no idea how terrifying that heavenly tribulation was. If not for the sect's aid, I would have been reduced to ashes. The sect exhausted countless spirit stones for me, and my own spirit energy elixirs were completely used up. Wu Ju was animated, eliciting occasional gasps of amazement from Guan Mystic Heart Realm. A bit slow? That was even after Wu Ju was cultivated with care, following his exoneration from a miscarriage of justice. Guan felt that Wu Ju was still far behind Li Xiandao, LV Xian, and Li Ye, and none of these three had a lifespan as long as his. After a while, Wu Ju set down his bowl of wine and asked with a smile, "What about you? How have you been these years? Any troubles?" Guan did not conceal the truth, sharing about the death of Lu Jujia. Although many old acquaintances had passed away, there were still many who were alive, keeping Guan from feeling too lonely. He got down from his mount and walked shoulder to shoulder with Jiang Xiong. Jiang Xiong did not hide the purpose of her visit. Some disciples from the Juhua sect had a conflict with those from the Supreme sect and ended up being captured. She was here to demand their release. But the situation was complicated. The Supreme sect claimed that it was the Ji family who captured the Juhua sect disciples due to a death feud, and they were reluctant to interfere. Guan was unconcerned. It's a trivial matter. When it comes to connections, I still have some clout. The guy who just got drunk was saved by me once. He knew Jiang Xiong had always been worried about this matter, so he took this opportunity to ease her concerns. Upon hearing this, Jiang Xiong's eyes widened, and she froze on the spot. After a long while, she burst into laughter, whispering, You really do have connections at the Supreme Sect. She didn't mind that Gu and had deliberately concealed this from her. After all, her life had changed because of him. It was she who was indebted to him. What right did she have to complain? In her heart, she felt more of a pleasant surprise. With the guidance of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, Gu An's future would certainly surpass hers. Thinking back to what Guan had said, that chi absorption cultivation was the dumbest method, might actually be true. Sword Venerable Fu Dao had imparted to him a more profound method of cultivation. Jiang Xiong lifted her head and gazed at the bright moon peeking through the leaves, finding it as beautiful as her current mood. Elsewhere, Guan returned to the loft in the Third Medicine Valley. His main body switched places with the clone, completely unbeknownst to Ji Xiaoyu below, and even the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor would be unable to see through it. Guan picked up the fate-determining pen on the table. Before Jiang Xiong had arrived, he had already deduced the nature of the demon sect of ghostly bindings, a purely demon path power. Its sect leader was a reincarnation of a heavenly demon with awakened memories, choosing the Taitsong continent to investigate Sword Venerable Fu Dao, preparing for the heavenly demon's invasion of the great heavenly spirit land. Every single member of the demon sect of ghostly bindings was undoubtedly sinful to the extreme. Killing them was, in essence, ridding the world of scourge. Guan began to write in the air with the pen, scribing the characters for demon sect of ghostly bindings, then determined their life or death with the longevity true word. Any link to the demon sect of ghostly bindings' chi fortune would be reduced to ashes. The sect leader of the demon sect of ghostly bindings was a divine immortal of wondrous dharma. Below him, the sect's influence was roughly comparable to the Starseed congregations, although they did not have as many members. When Guan placed the fate-determining pen back on the table, several notifications appeared before him. You have successfully seized 709 years of lifespan from the true man of Een Calamity, loose Immortal Realm 7th floor. You have successfully seized 2,171 years of lifespan from Lin Geshuan, Wandering Immortal Realm 2nd floor. You have successfully seized 624 years of lifespan from Yang Fu, Nirvana Realm 8th floor. Guan looked at these notifications, his face expressionless. The demon sect of ghostly bindings, which had brought despair to Jiang Xiong, was as insignificant as dust on a table in his eyes. However, as more notifications kept coming, Guan felt a special chi fortune approaching him through the depths. You have no need to worry, Guan said, trying to comfort her. Ji Xiaoyu shook her head. You don't understand this feeling. With that, she turned and left. Watching her go, Guan couldn't help but think of her previous incarnation as the third Mississippi. He suddenly felt some regret. Perhaps it was from experiences in his youth, but he held complex feelings for the third Miss, gratitude, and perhaps affection as well. Maybe Ji Xiaoyu was right. At least in this life, she seemed like a different person compared to the third Mississippi. In that case, he had yet to see the third Miss for the last time. Perhaps at the end of her life, the third Miss never even thought of him. Guan shook his head and chastised himself for being sentimental. He picked up the Green Hero travelogue and began to cultivate his mind. It was Xian Tiany's free-spirited literary style that influenced Guan, helping him dispel the meaningless sorrows in his heart multiple times. Those who were gone had passed away. It was important to cherish those who were alive. Life must go on. Such were Guan's thoughts as he soon became engrossed in a story of an isolated island.